I am going to call this regular meeting of the Littleton City Council on July 16th to order. City Clerk, roll call, please.
Mayor Schlachter.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Barr.
Here.
Councilmember Driscoll. Councilmember Grove. Here. Councilmember Peters.
Here.
Councilmember Reichart.
Here.
Councilmember Ryden. We have a quorum.
Thank you. And I can hear the differences in the speakers here. So please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right. Next item is approval of the agenda. Council, everyone's had a chance to review the agenda. Any changes? See no changes. It's approved without objection. Item 4, proclamations. No proclamations tonight. Item 5 is public comment period. Public comment period is time for members of our community to come speak before council on opinions regarding issues that are not part of public hearings. We have 3 minutes per person. When you get to 3 minutes, I will let you know. The sign-up sheet in the back. I'll go through the list of those who have signed up and then give an opportunity for anyone else that wishes to speak that did not have an opportunity to sign up. We expect comments to be civil. Any uncivil comments will we ask to not do that. May refer matters to city manager for immediate feedback or to get more feedback to council at a later date. So we got Jenny Starkey first up.
It's already on. Thank you. Good evening, City Council members. Thank you for having me. My name is Jenny Starkey. I am the Executive Director of the Littleton DDA. I'm here to discuss Project Downtown. I know you are getting close to a final alternative that represents the community's feedback and insight, and I'm here to support the DDA's initial recommendation of the village concept. The DDA has spent nearly a year working with the city and its partners and consultants through an extensive Project Downtown process. We feel it's been a strong process that has built trust with the community, engaged stakeholders, and was accessible to the community, and we're eager to continue. Project Downtown was created to support the downtown plan of development, and the plan was set out to be achievable with wise use of limited resources. The DDA was created at the wishes of the voters to champion an economically viable and vibrant downtown for the long term. The concern that I have as an urban place management professional is in the economically viable part. Should the city move in the direction of exploring the permanent closure of Main Street, there are assumptions that will need to be made. A broader discussion about the goals of the project will need to be determined. Huge budget implications will need to be addressed. Interim efforts and funding will need to be considered, and long-term unintended consequences will need to be thoroughly explored. I will speak strictly to the concept of closing Main Street to create a pedestrian mall. As I understand it, a technical review was already completed as part of Project Downtown, and the permanent closing of Main Street was not a viable option, which is why it was not presented to the community as a concept. In a research paper, which I'm happy to submit to council, titled The Experiment of American Pedestrian Malls, Trends Analysis and Necessary Indicators for Success, researchers found that pedestrian malls in the United States have a failure rate of 89%. Most have been removed or repurposed, and only 11% have been successful. Indicators suggest that constant pedestrian traffic needs to be present, and activation and programming needs to be considered. In most communities with pedestrian malls, the malls are maintained and programmed by bids or DDAs, and millions of dollars are needed to successfully oversee these efforts, something that the DDA does not currently have. Not only will this option delay the process, it will also negatively impact the DDA's ability to support downtown during a longer interim period. We're already struggling to implement downtown initiatives due to our very limited budget, and a further delay is only going to increase this. The DDA is building a relationship with the city, and it is still maturing. Project Downtown is an impactful initiative that has the ability to line efforts for many stakeholders and bring the community forward and together. The DDA encourages the City Council to take the community's feedback at face value and move forward as planned. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Karen Towntire.
Good evening. I have explained to you many ways in which our elections are illegitimate, the most egregious being uncertifiable election machines and legally invalid voter rolls. But even a hint of fraud should cause all of you to stop everything and investigate immediately. It's very disappointing that you haven't, but not surprising, because I do understand the fraud is overwhelming. When you're trapped in the middle of a fraudulent system and you start to realize the depth of the corruption in what you were told is the best system in the world, you end up asking, but what can one person do? The question has been asked before under the Soviet system and answered by a wise man named Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Let me read you some surprisingly applicable highlights from his 1974 essay, Live Not by Lies. At one time, we dared not even whisper. Now we complain frankly to one another. What kind of tricks are they playing on us, and where are they dragging us? They put anybody they want on trial, always they. We are powerless. Things have almost reached rock bottom. Nobody wants to listen to us, and nobody asks our opinion. How can we force them to listen to us? It is impossible to change their minds. It would be logical to vote them out of office, but there are no elections in our country. Is there really no way out? The simplest and most accessible key is this: personal non-participation in lies. Though lies may conceal everything, though lies may control everything, we should be obstinate about this one small point. Let them be in control, but without any help from any of us. It is the easiest thing for us to do and the most destructive for the lies. Because when people renounce lies, it cuts short their existence. Like a virus, they can only survive in a living organism. Let us refuse to say what we do not think. This would not be an easy path, but the easiest of all possible ones. Not an easy path, but there are people among us, dozens of them, who have been observing all these conditions for years and who live by the truth. Therefore, you will not be the first to take this path. You will join others. It will be easier and shorter if we embark on it in great and friendly numbers. If we are in thousands, it will not be possible for them to do anything to anyone. If we are in tens of thousands, we will not recognize our own country. If we are too frightened, then we should stop complaining that we are being suffocated. We are doing this to ourselves. I challenge not just the council, but everyone in this room, live not by lies. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Brett Murphy.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Brett Murphy. I'm on the DDA. I'm not speaking on behalf of the LDDA, though. I'm speaking on behalf of ownership of a property in downtown Littleton, 2600 West Main Street. I'm bringing in 8 new retail food and beverage units. And what I want to just say is Littleton is already great. It could be better, but it's already great. It might need a haircut. It does not need plastic surgery. We have a walk score of 85 out of 100 right now. So we already have what we need. We just need to make some tweaks. The bigger the construction project, the longer small businesses are going to be hurting. And I think if we have to be really mindful about how big and how detailed this project is. I think there's many small things that can be done. Cleaning up the sidewalks, making it conforming, trees, lighting, and we're on our way. That's it. 90% of my applicants don't want to be in Denver. They're coming here because they like what we have here. I think that's really important to know. We're not Cherry Creek. We're not Boulder. We're not the 16th Street Mall. We're Littleton. And let's be that. I think we need to honor the people before us. And by doing that, we get to honor the people after us. And we have a really beautiful downtown. So I think some of these concepts and designs have some good elements to them, but I think keeping it simple is the best way forward. And I don't think we need to. I don't think we need to fix what's not necessarily broken. It's a beautiful town. We've got really beautiful people who live here, people who care. We got good representation up here. And I think we just need to kind of move forward with our head and our heart. So thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Next up is Pam Chadbourne.
Good evening, Council, and welcome back. It's been a long month. And I'm going to say, I don't think that a lot of us understand what's on the agenda tonight. I'm not sure there were study sessions about them. These are some impactful decisions. I don't think we know what's really in Gallup-Kettering, so it's unfortunate that there is this break and maybe a lack of understanding and a grasp of citizen knowledge about what you're going to decide tonight. However, I do want to speak about Project Downtown and ask you to extend the study, but not to close Main Street. That to me is a non-starter in a concept. I've been saying, look at the number of piecemeal things we've got going. An economic development plan, a sub-area plan for Littleton Boulevard. You know what? Littleton Boulevard connects to Main Street. They're all one street for traffic and for peds and bikes. We need to start from a system solution for transportation for at least the north side of Littleton. When I went somewhere with my bike, I looked at the bike map. You may not remember, I'm this old enough to do that. When you went to a new city, you got your bike map, and then, if it was a great city, you'd see continuity. You'd be able to see how to get from one place to another. We haven't done that yet. It is not in our transportation plan. We do not have complete networks for pedestrians, bicycles, and cars are becoming more challenging because of traffic. We need to address transit, economics, land use, at least those three things in an integrated way on the north side of Littleton all together. Littleton Boulevard into Main. Transportation Mobility Board 2-3 years ago said, let's have Main Street, Littleton Boulevard for cars and Powers as a parallel path for bikes and pedestrians, and our zoning is based on that. The land use change along Powers is supposed to be supporting of the pedestrian bike traffic there. It's an amenity and a feature. This is a great alternative that needs to, so it would cross the railroad tracks and give it an alternative way into downtown that's perfectly safe for that mode of transit, and a different parking area and all of that for folks coming in. And let me say, we've got to expand downtown. There's this weird thing about Project Downtown that it's limited to the kind of the current focus area now, and that was artificial. It was always artificial because the Denver Water was going to pay, and you know what? That's no longer true. We know it's not true. They're not going to pay. The whole burden is on us. There's no urgency here, and it is it is too limited, and it's not a good planning process. So yes, please. Extend the study process. Closing Main Street is a non-starter, but look at the larger area.
Pam,
and
thank you. You're at the
functionality.
3 minutes. It was started at 30 seconds too late.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Sorry. And last up is Scott Hebert.
Thank you for having this meeting. I've lived in Colorado for 35 years. I've only lived in Littleton 3 years. I'm a bicycle rider, so the first time I got my bike out when I moved down here 3 years ago, I was appalled at the amount of holes and cracks in the streets right in front of my house. And I thought, oh, well, it must be coming up quickly for repaving. So I called, and they said, oh, yeah, you're up for, there's a plan, you're up for repaving in 2028. And I'm like, whew, that's like 7 years. And fortunately, they have come down every once in a while and done some patchwork, but it's really difficult to ride a bicycle. I've lost a hubcap off my car. My father-in-law lost his dentures. It's just like boom, 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 boom. And because I'm a bicycle rider, and I know there's other bicycle riders here, it's really, you can't ride without looking down, afraid of the next pothole that you're gonna hit. So it's got to a safety issue where you can't be looking out and looking for cars and traffic because you're looking down like, oh my God, there's another hole, there's another crack, there's another hole, there's another crack. And it's literally every 3 or 5 seconds you're hitting something on the road. I know it's probably a money issue. I know you have probably 100 or 1,000 different things to put money towards. Maybe it's the soil down here in Littleton that I'm not used to, that it cracks the streets more regularly, or it's the material that you use here in Littleton. But I'm here to advocate for some smoother roads so bicyclists can look around at the cars and the traffic, other pedestrians, other bicycles, instead of having to look down at their feet to make sure they're not going to hurt their bicycle or hurt themselves.
Thank you, Scott. That's all we have signed up on the list. Is there anybody else that wish to speak for council? There are no public hearings tonight, so this is the only opportunity. Frank?
Good evening, City Council. One, I'd like to thank Clerk Colleen for passing out potato party invitations for this Friday. If anybody in the audience would like some, please see me after I speak here. My name is Frank Atwood. I live in District 4. I've been a registered voter in Littleton for 24 years. I come before you this evening to thank you for scheduling an alternative voting study session on August 13th and to ask you at that study session to consider a resolution urging state legislature to expand the voting methods authorized in Colorado statute to include approval voting. So far, Littleton has only used plurality voting, Approval voting is a simple yet effective way to give more voices to voters so everyone has a more accurate understanding of the opinions of the electorate. The consensus in the world of voting methods is that plurality voting is the worst possible voting method. You might ask, why not use a form of ranked choice voting? Some cities in Colorado have. Here's why not. RCV is more complicated, opaque, and expensive than approval voting. When friends want to stay friends and are deciding on a restaurant or movie, they use a show of hands. That is approval voting. Friends can vote for one, some, or all. Count up all the votes, the candidate with the most votes wins. You can vote for both the Thai and pizza restaurant, knowing that neither vote will be a spoiler to what you like. Under approval voting, the ballot instructions only change slightly from vote for one to vote for all you support. Every vote of support is counted. If there is one seat to fill and you would be happy with 3 of the 5 candidates running, you can show support for all 3. The tallying for approval voting is the same as plurality voting. This means that Colorado's risk-limiting audits are easy to conduct, making county clerks happy. In contrast, when ranked choice voting has multiple tabulation rounds, the tabulation process becomes complicated and expensive. Voters in St. Louis adopted approval voting in 2020 and started using it in municipal elections just 4 months later. They could do this because it's so simple and yet powerful. I strongly urge you to ask the legislature to move forward on this simple yet necessary rules for county clerks to conduct approval voting elections. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to each of you coming to the Atwood Supple Potato Party. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Is there anybody else in the audience that would wish to speak to council tonight? Seeing no one, we'll close public comment portion. City Manager, do you have any immediate response to any comment?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'd just like to clarify one of the one speaker's comments about the Kettering Gallup master plan that you'll have consideration of tonight. Council did have their last study session on this on March 19th, where the draft plan was reviewed and with much discussion. Since then, staff and the consulting team have been working to follow up on council's input and bring that back for your consideration tonight. That's all I have, Mayor.
Great, thanks. We'll move on to council member reports. We'll start with Councilmember Driscoll.
Sure, thank you. Welcome back, everybody. It's been busy, surprisingly. I'm normally not this busy even when we're in council, but had a chance to attend the Stearns Park Parade in the Park last weekend. That 80s band was awesome. I hope some of you got out there for that. There'll be 2 other shows, I believe. The mayor, I'm sure, has those dates memorized. Also got to a couple ribbon cuttings. Kiln shared office space over in Riverside Downs. The old 24-hour fitness, so beautiful space. If anybody's looking for office space, Liz is the office manager, and it'll show you around. Fracco's, the old Toad Tavern, if you remember that, right off of Federal Boulevard. They had a ribbon cutting, cleaned it up, and lots of fun. Mike and Jennifer are the owners, and we'll take great care of you. We have the DDA meeting tomorrow. All are invited to attend that at ACC at 4 o'clock. That's the Downtown Development Authority that Jennifer spoke about. And then this Saturday, from 4 to 8 over at the Renke Brothers parking lot. It's not put on by the Renke Brothers, but it's put on, it's called the Big Wonderful, and it will be a lot of breweries attending that. So if anybody's looking to get out and have some fun, that's on Saturday from 4 to 8. Reminding everybody again about the Criterium coming up on August 3rd. That's downtown Littleton. A lot of fun. It's one of USA Cycling's main stops for bike racing, and I highly recommend coming on down from 3 to 10. The pros get started closer to like 6 or 7. And then just a reminder, we'll have our next meet and greet at Kettering Park on the 24th, starting at 4 o'clock. Pizza and ice cream will be served. So I look forward to seeing everybody there.
Thank you. Thanks for taking half my report. Councilmember Ryden.
Yes, thank you. So our downtown merchants, they host a Final Fridays. So at the final Friday of every month, a lot of those boutiques extend their hours. And I'm pleased to report this last one that they had in June was the best ever. They actually had people lined up outside their doors. So we want to continue to support that effort and spread the word. They had an awesome banner, kind of that said, hey, stores are going to be open late. So if you're getting happy hour on that Friday, just go and shop around afterwards. I'm also our liaison to the Tri-Cities Homelessness Policy Work Group. So just a few updates from my council members and everybody here today. We actually have a new homelessness coordinator. Her name is Jessica Diani Cox. She comes from the housing space, so she used to work for Mercy Housing. She has some experience with Aurora's Housing Authority. She most recently did some time with Rocky Mountain Human Services, so she's got that connection not only in the housing space but also in the resource space as well. And she just loves working in community social work. So we're excited for her to onboard. Bridge House Ready to Work. So as you all remember, that is council put some of our American Rescue Plan money to support that. That has support from federal, state, and local entities. And that is going to have almost 50 beds split among men and women and some emergency beds as well as longer term. And that's going to provide wraparound services and housing support as well as job support for some of our unhoused people. So it's kind of like a transitional housing sort of thing. And that building is being reworked. It's underway right now. It's scheduled to open at the end of the year, and staff will be hired a few months prior. And I'll continue to report back on that. And then just in case folks are concerned about our unhoused in this really, really hot weather, those who are kind of setting up spending time in our parks, the ranger team with South Suburban Parks and Rec, they are offering water, electrolyte packages, and rides for those that they're seeing to safe places, to other shelters, to help them get out of the elements. And our libraries are also serving as a safe place for people to go in the heat. So please keep that in mind and know that they're also working in conjunction with the police departments, but also with just making sure that they're getting medical checks as needed, so they're being taken care of.
Thank you. Councilmember Peters.
I'm going to start all the way back with CML, which we did the first week that we were out, and that was a very full week. The highlight for me personally was a tour I signed up for in Fort Collins, and they taught us kind of about how they joined the nonprofit with the city to do this very cool museum, answered a lot of specific questions about that. And then we also got a tour of their Whitewater Park, I think they call it, behind the museum, and how they really worked very quickly. Once their first shovel was in the ground, they said they had to be done within a year, and it is amazing. There were people all over sunbathing and dogs and public art and all sorts of things. So walking around and seeing how they've done this cool project, which is kind of akin, I think, to what we're hoping to do at Reynolds Landing. So that was very, I learned a lot from that, and the whole CML experience was really fun for me for the first time. But that was the highlight. And then the second thing I wanted to mention is that we had our meeting with South Suburban Parks and Rec yesterday, and it was a very productive meeting, I thought. We relayed some of our concerns as the city of Littleton and maybe making sure that maintenance is meeting our standards. And then we also got an update on 13 different capital projects. I don't know if you know they're doing that many projects in Littleton, so there's a lot going on there. And then we have a joint meeting with them, I think, next month, so we'll hear more from them. Oh, and on that note, the pond that is across from me, my son really wants me to advocate for it remaining a pond. Let the record show. I know it's not going to happen, but he said he was going to watch. So there is a meeting for citizens to give their opinions on, now that the pond is not an option, what would be the next best thing. So that is August 8th. Then yesterday, I participated in the Arts and Culture Master Plan. I did an interview with a consultant, which was really helpful. They asked a bunch of good questions about Littleton and our culture and what makes us special. And then there was also a meeting at night. I think there's about 50 people there probably who kind of did these different exercises and shared ideas for what we want to see in the Arts and Culture Master Plan, which we're all excited to see come to fruition. And there's going to be a survey that I think hopefully will be shared far and wide. So if you get that or see a QR code for that, participate and share your opinions. The fourth thing I would say is Robert and I are doing a citizen meeting, and I got it too late for this next online report magazine that, goes out tomorrow, or closed today. So ours is September 21st. I'll plug Stevens too. I think his is August 24th. So a couple opportunities if you want to come to the library and talk to us about what your concerns are. And then the final thing, unless our city manager is going to say more about it, is that Meadowood got the resident offer accepted. So they are doing their best to continue to gather money and support for that. They do have a GoFundMe, which I'm sure I could share with you after if you want to participate.
Thank you. Councilmember Reichert.
Thank you. I want to echo Councilwoman Peters' comments about CML. I had a great time there, and I really appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with my colleagues who attended with me. I also appreciate the opportunity to ride in Andrea's cool new car. That was a lot of fun, too. She drove us home, so I really appreciate that. I'm grateful for that opportunity. I missed a TMB meeting because I was gallivanting in Oregon, but then I was able to go to a special TMB meeting, which was double booked with NextGen, so I apologize to the NextGen committee. I went to the TMB meeting. I want to alert my colleagues that the Transportation Mobility Board is looking forward to the joint study session that we're doing together, and they're working hard to prepare kind of a set of slides and a set of things to talk to us about Vision Zero. And I would tell you that I told them that we are looking forward to having a conversation with them. It's not going to be a sit and get in terms of a presentation, but we'll be able to talk to them about kind of they're going to make some recommendation to us, but we'll be able to talk about why they came to those conclusions that they did. And then I want to say thank you to Dr. Amanda and Dr. Christina. I had the opportunity to have a discussion with a class from the ILIF School of Theology a couple days ago here in the community room. And that was a great experience, and I'm really grateful I was able to talk to them about being both from my experience on school board and my experience here on city council. And I'm really grateful for that experience.
Thank you. Councilmember Grove.
No report.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, just a couple of quick things. First, also, I wanted to talk a little bit about Colorado Municipal League, since I also did attend that. And the question might come from a member of the public as to why you have so many council members attending a singular event. Well, quite frankly, I think it's actually one of the most beneficial educational events that a municipal official can attend. There's such a wide variety of opportunities there. And myself and my colleagues, attended a variety of those events to kind of bring back some of that information to our city. I'd say, amongst some of the, the more, I think, salient issues that were brought up were other small towns, especially in rural and southern Colorado, dealing with mobile home parks and significant deferred maintenance. This ties into just a point I will be bringing up in a minute as well. But, the challenges that we have around those who are most vulnerable in our community, as well as property owners not, necessarily particularly caring for those long-term capital and operational budgets and taking care of those residents. It is a problem, it is a challenge that plagues so many communities and many different municipalities, and talented staff working in partnership with developers and nonprofits are seeking ways to mitigate these challenges, but these things do not obviously get solved overnight. I think it actually ties in right nicely to the comments Councilmember Peters was discussing, that Meadowood Mobile Home Park, as some of you may remember, prior to our council break, we have been working with them to essentially assist in any way we could financially to see a due diligence be done for the purchase of the property by the housing cooperative. It's so exciting to see that successful. In addition, Woolhurst is also sold to a private developer. And this is not necessarily, I'm not up here saying things are good or bad or right or wrong, but we now have an interesting series of circumstances in front of us to see how we as a city can continue to best support all these residences, regardless of who owns what or how these parks are being operated, and making sure that their base service delivery needs are being met, and holding into account the new ownership models, regardless of who it is, to make sure that things are not falling back into the circumstances that we have seen throughout the state. So again, just getting evidence from other mobile home park operations throughout the state was one of the benefits of attending CML. Another one being, I attended on the very last day in the very last session, Regional Air Quality Council discussion around idling and idling ordinances. And I'm not going to go into the history of the Denver metro area's horrific air quality. I'm sure you all breathe it and experience it the same as anyone else. But from a regulatory perspective, it is a saddening and worsening condition in many respects. The more we depend on single occupancy vehicles to traverse from one part to another, the more we expand our housing in a non-dense, sprawling fashion across the Front Range. These are things that we will continue to face in terms of the immediate effects of air quality on our lives, on the lives of those who have the most have the greatest degree of health challenges, the most vulnerable, like our children. And so one of the sessions I attended at CML was dealing with idling and how we can reduce the amount of heavy vehicle idling throughout the city. There are state statutes that dictate some of these issues, but Littleton can do better. I'm hoping to bring some of these model ordinances from the Regional Air Quality Council in front of our Environmental Stewardship Board here in the coming months with our city staff support, just to explore what can Littleton be doing above and beyond, because we are chasing a really challenging issue and we need to be tackling it from all fronts. So, like I said, Colorado Municipal League was fantastic, and had the pleasure of voting on some of the new elected officials for CML as well. Secondly, Writers Vista Meet and Greet and Eat. I attended it because it's only about 50 feet from my home, and it's my neighborhood park, and I love bringing my daughter out there, even though it got blustery in the middle, and the bouncy house had to be deflated. Really appreciate all the staff that showed up. And I think it was, I really love these events because it just shows such a wide diversity of people, challenges. People will bring things to us in person. Patrick was there with me. We will hear things at these events that we don't necessarily hear in other venues, that folks don't, say online or give a phone call about or hit on SeeClickFix. And so I just want to show my appreciation to all the city staff that came out for these events, and kind of told folks about what we're doing for school and bike and pedestrian safety, to grounds and tree maintenance, to the PD. And so, again, just showing my appreciation. Some of the things that we heard, or at least I heard, or when speaking with some of these residents, related to things that we are working on, road infrastructure, as I think we've also heard tonight, showing where and how our road infrastructure plans are being implemented over the coming years. But it is a difficult thing to communicate, and we as a city, I think, are even starting to put the tools and mechanisms into place to be able to better communicate all the good work that our city and our staff are doing. And so I'm excited to see what that future holds as well. A lot of questions also came up regarding our Safe Routes to Schools programs. Where did these new signs come from? Why do they look different? Why here and not there? And I would say that, we've had, honestly, for folks that haven't been involved in the conversation over this past year, it might be a little bit disconcerting to see new things pop up on your street, but a city is kind of a living, breathing experiment of trying to solve challenging issues. And this is kind of one of our first steps. So not every street, not every bollard, not every curb stop, not every piece of paint is going to be put in exactly the right place, the right way, at the right time. But it's part of our process of kind of living and working with one another, being good neighbors to each other, to calmly and rationally kind of bring those concerns to us, and for us to try to turn around and try to respect and find middle ground on how we can make changes and improvements as we go along. So those were some of the highlights I heard from Writers Vista. So That's pretty much all I got. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Just briefly here, tomorrow, I believe it is, the Mayor's Institute on City Design, which is a leadership initiative of the National Endowment for the Arts in partnership with the United States Conference of Mayors, is hosting a virtual seminar and discussion on attaining quality urban design through city leadership. So I'll try to attend that. I don't know if anyone in council has any interest in watching that. I can pass on the link to that, but I'll send it to the city manager as well. Over the past couple of weeks, let's see, the Metro Mayor's Caucus met, way back in end of June here. I'm trying to remember, I don't have my notes with me on that, but I remember there was a presentation from RTD. Council, we should expect to see the RTD board meet later this month, and there'll probably be some sort of Tabor question on for RTD, as they'll be pushing up against their Tabor limit, and it's very, very confusing if they were going to have to do the refunds, so they'll be looking to go out to the voters to deal with that. So just we'll have more information. I'll pass that out. Also, let's see, last week, the Metro Mayor's Caucus Executive Committee met. I talked about a few things, but I just want to let council know, and I had emails back and forth with the city manager and city attorney a little bit. There's some discussion about making sure council members understand how to, appropriately respond to maybe aggressive residents or community members out in the community there. I know that a few other communities, they've been dealing with that, so work on with Chief Stevens and our staff here to figure out how to do that, because as we saw this past weekend, the temperature of our political discourse is getting out of hand here. And so I just want to, say that, thankfully, here in Littleton, we are a nice, welcoming community. We get along for the most part, but, violence and personal attacks has no place in our political system at all, and would love to see violence get away, not just politically, but everything. You don't want to put Chief Stevens out of a job, but it'd be great to have the police used as little as possible. And don't want political season, campaign season, to be a time that they're on heightened alert for things. That political season seems to be 365 to 24/7 now. So, and I just want to remind everyone that, a person that you disagree with politically is still a person, and to have that discussion on policy and ideas and not on attacking a person personally like that. So just thought I had to say that. I wasn't planning on saying that, but it just kind of came to mind here. So, and with that, I'll close the comment period here first. Turn it over to the city manager. On that high
Thank
note.
you, Mayor. Just a couple things. Good evening, council, and welcome back. I think other council members have addressed the Meadowood community news, and we're very pleased that we were able to help them get into the due diligence period. They are in escrow with the seller, and there's still work to do just regarding that due diligence from several angles. But we're hoping that they'll be able to follow through and own their community. I just want to announce for council and for the public just the upcoming National Night Out, which is a celebration of our neighborhoods, where those who choose to have parties, and city council members and staff are welcome to join and say hello and also celebrate with them. I believe we have about 7 parties so far. And I think the main news, the headline for right now, is that we will be delaying the start of the council meeting. That's because National Night Out always falls on a Tuesday. It's across the nation. We will be starting the meeting that evening at 7:30 p.m. instead of 6:30. So we'll have more about that on the website, and council will certainly see it again, but I just wanted to announce that. And then August 6th, as the city attorney's pointing out, I'm the last one who should do dates. Thanks, Reed. So finally, coming out of the break, we have a lot of policy coming to council, and I just want to give just a couple coming attraction points for the next 6 weeks. You'll see study sessions and regular meetings on potential ballot questions for November, the nuisance code and our approach to code compliance more generally. Also, you'll see a policy for your consideration on financial partnerships and economic development incentives. Also, there will be a joint meeting with your Transportation and Mobility Board on the Vision Zero traffic framework. There will also be, as a speaker noted, on August 13th, a study session on alternative voting methods. And then you'll also hear about the Broadway Corridor Study report. So lots of good stuff coming for council and for the public, and that's all I have, Mayor.
Great, thanks. City Attorney?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to piggyback off a couple of comments Mayor Pro Tem made, I would say that our next meet, eat, and greet is a week from Wednesday, and that's at Kettering. And so feel free if you're the member of the public to come down and ask Councilmember Barr any question you can think of. Secondly, I guess I'll give this update just to get direction from City Council. So as Council knows, the City of Littleton is part of a class action suit against a number of different manufacturers and distributors of opioids. Back in September of 2023, we reached an agreement in principle with Kroger, and it was approximately $1.3 billion that would be paid out to those members of the class, which includes states, counties, cities, to be paid out to help offset and mitigate some of the issues surrounding the opioids epidemic. So we finally have, not to use the same word again, finalized some of those details, of which I don't have the exact specifics, but I can tell you that as part of the agreement, Kroger will be giving the state of Colorado about $66 million. From that $66 million, it then gets distributed through a variety of different ways. We have different regions that have been set up as part of an agreement that the city reached with other participating entities within Colorado. 60% goes to those various regions. 20% goes specifically to local governments. 10% goes to the state, and 10% goes to what's called an infrastructure share, which is kind of a more regional look at trying to mitigate some of those impacts. And so with that said, I don't know the exact amount of monies that the city is going to receive, but what I'm looking for is direction to go ahead and sign off on it. What it will do is it will be payable over a period of 11 years. I'm not anticipating that this is going to be a huge amount. It's probably somewhere under, $100,000 over the course of those 11 years. And so it's a relatively small amount. This council has previously given direction to expend part of those funds that have come in from other settlements that we have reached. Most recently, council gave direction to help offset or pay for our co-responder program in the amount of about $40,000 to go offset the costs of that. And so I believe we probably have about $100,000 that is currently sitting in escrow, if you will, waiting for a future determination from City Council as to how to use those monies. So this will just go into that pool of monies, and I know we'll have a future conversation about the direction of where Council believes we should expend those. So
I will
Jim.
tag on that question is planned for council at your September budget retreat. So we'll spend some time on that just as an update and then have the options for you.
Great. Does council have any concern with city attorney moving with that process?
I feel we should turn down the money, absolutely. We don't need it, we should turn it down.
Let the record show.
There was a wink from
Councilmember Ryden.
Yeah, and Councilmember Reichart was being sarcastic for the record, okay? Just as another update to everybody, our attorney mentioned that there also is a regional group. We are part of Region 9, and last year I was our chair of that, and we kind of rotate that for Tri-Cities because it's representing Sheridan, Englewood, and Littleton. So Steve Ward on Englewood City Council right now is our representative to that group, which is working at the county level to address some of where that money is going and allocating. It's already been allocated for the first 2 years, but every 2 years, they kind of keep deciding where that money goes.
And just a quick note, one of the things that we've been waiting for as we get towards that budget process is some of our partner organizations to make some determinations as to where those monies are going to go, specifically Arapahoe County. And so we're looking at maybe the big picture and what could be done, but we're still kind of waiting on other partners to give us kind of what their ideas are. So
I don't see any serious opposition to the city attorney moving forward with that, so great, thanks. Anything else?
Just that there is a state law that prohibits idling a car for more than 5 minutes within a 60-minute period of time, but we'll look at
Does that
refining
apply to
those.
electric vehicles?
No, and not to police cruisers, so Doug's okay also. Thank you, that's all.
Great, thanks. All right, also as I get my computer open, I believe we are on to scheduled appearances here. I think I'm just gonna say Cycling with Outage is the first up, and it was Lauren, I believe, is gonna come up and speak to us about this program.
Thank you. I'm Lauren O'Connell, and this is Chris Wooten, and two of our favorite.
Lauren, can you
passengers.
speak into the mic,
I can't
please?
reach it.
We'll let the tall city attorney pull it down there.
Thank you, sir. Okay, thank you. Chris, will you introduce our two favorite passengers while I grab my glasses?
Several of you, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, might remember this group of 3 people as we went down Western Welcome Week in our parade of trishaws, and it was a marvelous, marvelous day. I still have fond memories. Thank you. And I think you and I went out for a ride once.
Thanks, Chris. First, before I start the presentation, I'd just like to tell you that Barb Lotz, our co-founder and executive director, is so disappointed that she couldn't be here. She did ask me to say this to you. It is a great honor as the executive director to represent Cycling Without Age in thanking you for the Littleton City grant of $1,450. Thank you for the opportunity to share how we have utilized the funds to help give thousands of trishaw rides to thousands of Littleton residents and bring many others to the great city of Littleton. Due to a recent shattered tibia and multiple surgeries, I am unable to stand or even sit, and appreciate Lauren, that's me, our grant writer, will be presenting in our behalf. So she's crushed, she's not here. But I'm going to start. So I know you want to hear how we invested the funds you gave us, and I will tell you that at the end of the presentation. I do want to make sure that everybody understands what we do and how we do it. So I'm going to go through our mission, key facts, who we serve, what we do, how we do it, where we go, how we impact Littleton, our grant funds, how we use them, and then looking forward. All right, our mission: to ensure the most vulnerable never become the least visible, and to be a positive force in the community. That's our passion. The key facts, and these are the things we really want you to remember. We are a 501c3. We are all volunteer. All of our rides are free. We have 8 trishaws. We were established in late 2019. We are Littleton-based, and we believe in reciprocal giving, and I'll explain that and what that means to us later on. Who we serve with wind in their hair: older adults with mobility, stability challenges, or they're isolated, or they just enjoy nature and they don't get out, don't have the ability to do that as much. And they live assisted living, independent living, they live at home, it doesn't matter to us. We also serve special needs, adults and youth, and that's an area we've really grown in this year and continue to. In 2020, we had 296 riders. Last year, we had 2,410. you can see we've really grown. January through May in 2023, we had 371 riders. January through May this year, we had 929. So we are really growing this year, especially with the addition of Trishaws. Here are some pictures of our older adults. Adults with special needs. We just started giving group rides to the Colorado Center for the Blind folks, and that was a really fun day on the Platte in Hudson Gardens. Youth with special needs. In May, we did 2 group rides with Littleton Public Schools, their transition program. These kids had a great time. It was just fun to see them have so much fun and be out there. We do celebrations, happy birthdays, anniversaries, family events. We've even done weddings and helped with weddings. You name it, we've done it. I think last year we did 94 or somewhere in the 90s different celebrations. So they're a lot of fun for everybody. We do special events. We take Trisha rides out to Hudson Gardens and look at the art there and talk about the art to our passengers. My mother and I just did a ride last week for the Rose Garden, and we had the master rose gardener talk to us about roses and everything about them. It's really interesting. You can see during Halloween, Hudson Gardens, they do a big pumpkin event. We're out there riding Trishaws around. And of course, we do parades and Western Welcome Week. Hopefully you saw us last year too. Our intergenerational experience are really special. So you get grandparents with grandkids or their own kids and then their kids. And they get to experience something that's a lot of fun. They all get to talk about. And especially the gentleman in the center picture with Barb. Excuse me. He gets to have this thing with his grandkid and talk about it. And it's a very special thing and very popular with our passengers to do. All right, again, we are 100% volunteer driven. And here are some of them, some of our passengers. We love them. We started out with 31 volunteers. We're now at 117. And guess who our 117th is? Our own Mike Gent. Now, he just got certified as a new pilot. So we love that. He's been so great. 80% of our volunteers are retired, so we keep them all off the street. I talked about reciprocal Trisha experience, and it really is not just giving. It's everybody gives. The pilot pedals, listens, engages, tells stories. Our passengers share their stories, their excitement, their knowledge, and gratitude. And many of them actually volunteer. We have a whole slew of volunteers at River Point. They do decorations, they set up our celebrations, they do cards, they do everything, and they're just wonderful. So everybody gives. Here's something from Otto, one of our pilots. I can honestly say that being a pilot for Cycling Without Age Littleton has helped maintain my purpose in life. He's retired. It is a joy to take my fellow humans on a ride that makes them happy and smile. I think we all feel that way. All right, where we go? We go down the South Platte River Trail, Hudson Gardens, Nixon's. If our passengers want coffee, we stop and have coffee with them. Carson Nature Center, the dam, floodplain marker, Chatfield Dog Park, Breckenridge Brewery. We're all over the place. And we're out in nature, and we have beautiful nature here. All right, so how do we impact? We bring joy. Our passengers love it. Our pilots love it. Our volunteers who aren't pilots love being involved in this organization. When I've done a lot of focus groups, a lot of interviews with our passengers, they all say, it makes me so happy. I feel so joyful. A sense of freedom. Here's one of our passengers, Ruby. I feel so free. They're just out there, wind in their hair, having a wonderful time. Love. Here's a mother and her son. I never thought I would have the opportunity to ride a bike with my son. Today, that dream came true. Respect. Lois says, "Woo, I am queen for the day." And they really do feel like the center of attention and that they matter. And that's really important to everybody. Then there's the sense of belonging and belonging to the community. When we ride down the Platte Trail, people who are on the side walking turn, they smile, they say hi, they wave, and our passengers really feel like, wow, this is my community, and I'm a part of it. And wind in the hair. Here's Bonnie. I physically can't ride a bike anymore, and how I didn't realize how much I missed it. And we have a lot of passengers that feel that way. Another impact is something newer, social return on investment. We got a grant last year from the Beanstalk Foundation to do this study. Social return on investment measures the value of the efforts of an organization to alleviate a social, environmental, or community issue. It identifies how effectively a company uses its capital and other resources to create value for the community. So, we hired a consulting firm that does this. They did a thorough analysis and determined that in 2023, our social return on investment was over $182,000. So for every dollar we spent, over $5 of value was returned to the community. Now, this is kind of complicated. It would take me all of my time to go through this, but I'm happy to introduce you to the consultant if you want to learn more about how this works and how it's done. So here we are. Your grant of $1,450 helped us buy secure and lockable cabinets that house our valuable batteries and maintenance supplies. And we also were able to purchase inventory parts for our 3 new trishaws, including brake levers, shifters, tires, tubes, belts, gears, all that wonderful stuff. So thank you very much for that grant. This is our team of maintenance people that take care of our trishaws. We are a safety-first organization. Every time our trishaw goes out, it hauls about 600 pounds, and they go out multiple times. So all the inventory, everything that you've helped us obtain or get helps us keep our trishaws in good shape. Looking forward this year, we're growing and focusing on youth programs. I mentioned the Littleton Public School Transitions Program. We're also working with the Littleton Public Schools Special Education and the Center for the Blind Youth, and we're going to be launching group rides for them in September. We're also working with South Suburban on doing Ride with a Ranger, the Audubon Society, Ride with a Master Birder, Hudson Gardens, they have all those events we're getting involved in. And we're also putting together a ride up Dinosaur Ridge to go look at the dinosaur track. So that's just a few of things going on. Thank you. Here's our wonderful board of directors, our fearless leaders, that, again, we're all volunteers. And thank you for helping us bring joy, freedom, love, respect, belonging, and wind in their hair to our Littleton passengers as well as all of our volunteers. So thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Council, anyone have any questions? Councilman Ryden.
I love this. This is so fantastic. I truly love seeing you guys out there. How do members of our public get a ride?
We have postcards. All they have to do is call our scheduler.
Okay.
And so we pass out postcards on our rides. All of our trishaw people carry them. And we hand them out as people say, hey. I mean, that's how a lot of the volunteers are recruited. Yeah, there's a phone number on the card. Anyone can call. We have Facebook. We have website. So everyone is welcome. You just have to call the scheduler.
So we'll take them here.
Do you know what the website URL is off the top of your head? What's the website?
CWALittleton.com.
CWALittleton.com.
Yes.
For the public, we will, we have the postcards, and we'll give them to the council members.
All right. Anything else?
Councilmember Peters.
I forgot to mention that I feel like part of the magic of having Meadowwood here all the time and you guys here speaking up, I heard Meadowwood has received 25 rides from you guys. So thank you for incorporating them in our community in that way.
You're welcome. Our pleasure.
Anyone else? I have just a quick, you do? Oh, okay. Quick question. Have you been in contact with the Littleton Social Cycle, a group of people that bike around Thursday nights and Sundays? That would be a good connection to make with there. It's typically a crew, a younger crew with kids, younger families biking around, but that'd be a good way to make the connection and make that intergenerational.
Yeah, I'm pointing to Jonathan because
Yes.
he's involved. Aren't you? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was looking at him too, so, you know. Great. No further questions. Thank you so much. Thanks for everything you guys do. That's great.
you.
And it's so great to see everyone come out here. It's great to have our council chambers full of happy people.
This is our organization, but it's our asset, our community asset. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have, is it another presentation? Linda Kaiser from First Presbyterian Church of Littleton.
Well, it's hard to follow that. Wow, you all are impressive. What an impressive group. So I'm from the church, but I'm really here to support the free community dinner that we started in 2016. And it is a dinner that we looked around the community and saw a lot of things that didn't seem to be happening at the time. And let me see if I can use my clicker here. This is our vision: reaching out to the lonely and hungry in our community to offer good, healthy food in a home-like, loving environment. We will treat our guests with dignity and loving kindness. When we just started this, we really weren't sure what we were doing exactly. We called around and found out people that had been doing this in other communities. And about the same time, Graceful Cafe was just getting started, so we talked to Heather about the guests and what they were doing. And of course, they are just incredibly serving our community with both the hungry and the lonely. But there weren't a lot of things going on. So we started in 2016, and by 2020, when we had to shut down for COVID, we were serving around 125 guests each month. We have a monthly dinner on the last Tuesday of each month. Now, thankfully, we got the wonderful grant from the Littleton Partnership last year and in 2023, and we are so grateful for that. Since the first 6 months of this year, we have served 488 guests. Now, looking at your numbers, that doesn't sound like a whole lot. However, we are serving a full meal to whoever shows up. We serve a meal, we serve seconds, and we serve to-go boxes. We never know how many are coming because there's no RSVPs. It's seeing them line up and come down the stairs filled with joy. I can't express the joy of serving this dinner and this group. When we came back from COVID, the people that came back, we weren't sure they'd come back or who even survived, quite honestly. They were filled with joy. They hugged us and kissed us, which was somewhat disconcerting coming out of COVID, but we had a lot of personal touches. But that kind of tells you what it means. We use real tablecloths, centerpieces, glass dishes, and utensils. We want to be sure that they feel like this is a dinner party for whoever shows up. This is a picture of our guests coming down. Our main regular guests continue to be the older community members of that live around our church area. That's Bradley House, Amity House, all the affordable apartment houses that are up and down Windermere, within walking distance of our church. Many of them don't have transportation. My husband, who is a greeter in here, we're not supposed to do this, but actually took a guest home for her first time because she was new in town. She lived almost to Bellevue. And when she left at 7 o'clock, she was going to walk home. And single woman, barely making it, living in an affordable place. And so he took the risk. I rode in the back seat, so he was protected, and we dropped her home. But it is something that we didn't realize we were going to be dealing with. We moved the dinner to the last Tuesday night of every month after the first year, when the table host, because each table has a table host that visits with the people and helps them in any way they can and listens to the conversation and keeps it going. And what we discovered was because the people that are coming are on these very limited incomes. Many of them live by themselves, have no family around, and by the end of the month, they're living on their Social Security, and it's gone, and they're hungry. So we always do the dinner on the last Tuesday night of every month, and that has brought more joy and more comments than anything we ever expected. Of course, we also have some homeless, and we have a lot of homeless veterans and veterans that are living alone. Although we did lose a lot of them during COVID, they didn't come back. We miss their stories and their sense of humor. But we also have a lot of good things that are going on. Now that Life Center is across the street from us, we have the homeless that can kind of gather there, rest there, get cleaned up, and come to our dinners. We will always have homeless. We had a group of homeless that came starting last year and came all the way through March that always wanted to come and show up together. Most of them had come out of the foster care system, so they were young homeless. And they came until March, and we actually celebrated one of their birthdays that night. And they were not coming back, and they told us they weren't coming back because they were finally able to get good shelter and an opportunity for stability up north. So we miss them. We're grateful for their stability, but our overall numbers have not declined. That's the issue. I want to show the menus because I hope you, oh good, you can read those. I put these up on the screen so you can actually see what we cook and serve. With the continuing rising cost of food, our shopping has really taken a lot more time trying to find the best way to solve our problems of finances. However, we've been able to keep the cost of each serving to between $3.75 a full serving to $5 for a full serving. It's hard to even get a McDonald's meal for $5. And yet that means they're getting the main course, they're getting a vegetable, they get fresh made salad, they're getting fruit, and they're getting a dessert, and they're getting seconds in a to-go box. That's critical for them. I think I forgot to mention when I was talking about the numbers we have served in the first 6 months, that we have already spent the grant of $1,750 on the meals. And that's why I wanted to show you the menus. In January of this year, we had our spaghetti dinner, and we had it for the first 2 or 3 years because one of our team members' husband has an Italian heritage, and they volunteered to come and fix his family red sauce, Italian sauce, make the homemade meatballs, and buy the spaghetti. And they pay for the sauce, the meat for the meatballs, the spaghetti, and the sausage. They did that. They volunteered to do that again for our dinner this year. That saved us $500 just for that part of the dinner. So that kind of gives you an idea of where your grant is going. It's going strictly for food and the napkins and to-go boxes, basically, that we have to purchase. We operate in our church, so we pay no rent, we pay no utilities, and we operate with all volunteers. We have 22 to 25 volunteers at each dinner. Currently, we have 9 table hosts, 5 servers, 3 to 4 greeters, and of course the kitchen and cleanup crew. And if you looked in the pictures, there were brief pictures of the kitchen crew, and I can bring that back if you'd like to see it again. We market with the banner outside the church for the full week before the dinner. And then we market through Bemis Library, Love Inc., Graceville Cafe, South Metro Housing Options, Nourish, St. Mary's Food Bank, Doctors Care, the Whiz Kids Organization, the Ark across the street from us, and the laundromat behind the Ark across the street from us. It's amazing how many guests come from the laundromat. We really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about the dinner, and I'd love to answer questions about it because I'm filled with joy and excitement. I start getting excited the Friday before the dinner, wondering who's going to show up, how many regulars are going to come back, who are going to be the new people that show up. And everybody that comes gives us so many compliments that it kind of can go to our head sometimes. But we have been serving, as I say, we're at 488 through the first part of the year. So that's a lot of guests and a lot of meals. So I'm open to questions. I want to thank each one of you for the 2 grants we have received. I also want to thank you for all you do for our city. And it was interesting hearing your reports tonight because we went to the South Bridge meet and greet last year. We live in the South Bridge neighborhood. And it was wonderful to meet some of the staff and council members at that dinner and actually visit and talk about the things that we were concerned about in our neighborhood. So thank you for that. My husband and I have lived here since 1981. We think the city of Littleton is granted one of the best in the metro area, and of course we personally feel like it's the best. So thank you for all you do. Thank you for your grant, and please ask me questions about the dinner. I think I want to go back and let you see the picture one more time. Any questions?
Thank you, Linda. Council, does anyone have any questions? Mayor Pro Tem?
I just want to first off say thank you for all that you're doing to, help provide some food security for folks and a sense of community, as that is equally as nourishing as the food that you're providing. With the cost of food increasing, how do you see, and the challenges that you see when you mentioned that you're not seeing a decrease in the number of folks that would want or need any of these services? How are you preparing, I guess, to continue this on in the future, and how can the city help you do that?
Well, of course, I applied for another grant. I got the grant in last
Okay,
week.
well, yeah, good. I'm glad we got that plug in there.
Yeah, I got that plug in. We actually, that's always a concern for us. When we started the dinner, we started with a personal grant from our team. And because we weren't sure what was going to happen, quite honestly. We had no idea of the food insecurity just around our church. And at the time, we also were marketing through the Littleton Independent, and Sonia Edmo did a fabulous article about us in 2018. She came, she went to the dinner, she took pictures and did a deal. But what that's drawing is people from way outside sometimes of Littleton. And what we discovered is the need is so extreme right around us, that's probably pretty much all we can serve right now. We have small donations from other members in our church. We have it in our mission budget now. We are trying to not pull away from any other missions. Because all of us, we support a lot of those that we market with because we're all in this together. This is really a community action, and the longer we do this dinner and the more we get involved with each one of these groups is when we see really what's going on in our city. It was interesting to hear what you all had to say about the Meadowview Trailer Park. I've been following that very closely and very concerned because we look at those parks and wonder what's going to happen. That's one of the few affordable places left for many of these people, and we have some of them that come from that area. So by having a table host at each table, they get to really talk to the people, and they always share their stories. They always ask where they came from, how they heard about it. We have a lot of regulars now that come back and bring their friends, many of them because they're the one that can drive. And so we are looking for the grant. We don't want to ask for a lot of other types of grants because many times they have strings. And your string is really we have to spend the money on what we're supposed to do on food. That's not an issue for us. But yes, we are seeking about that. We're talking about that with our church. We're looking at church grants perhaps. But we are funded. We are not planning on going away. It was interesting. That was one of the things that came up when we started. They said, don't be surprised if you have no one show up for the first dinner. And of course, we had a hailstorm the first dinner, and we had 11 guests. So we had more volunteers than we had guests. But they came back in double the next time. And then when we started back full time and let the community know that it was going to be every month from now on, all of a sudden, that's when the numbers exploded. So we know the need is there. It's not going to go away. We continue to work on how we'll do that. We are very good shoppers. One of the things that we also are doing, when we look at the menu, you're going to see a lot more chicken than we had before because, of course, it's the least of the protein amounts. And we don't have fish at all because we can't afford it. And so we also, if we have an overabundance of something, like on the meatloaf, if we have leftover meatloaf, we immediately freeze that and use it to make the tacos in one of the later dinners. We have planned all of this out. There is no waste. We have no waste at all. There's never thrown away food from our dinner. So, any other questions? Money question is the big one, which is why I'm hoping that you all get as excited. I passed out a flyer, so feel free to come to our dinner. Everybody's welcome. You do have to line up and come in, and I'll just tell you that at 6 o'clock, it is a big line. So.
Councilmember Ryden.
Linda, thank you so much I echo what Councilmember Barr said. Thank you for providing this service and for your enthusiasm and for feeling so inspired by it. So you talked about that person that was given a ride home.
Mm-hmm.
Would you consider working with Cycling Without Age to help with some of those rides?
Yeah. It might, and my husband's got one of the cards, so we can look at that. Because it is 7 o'clock, and of course right now it's bright daylight, but in the winter it's pitch dark.
Mm-hmm.
We do have some of many of the people that come that aren't homeless, but are the working poor, I call them. And many of them use public transportation, to get to their jobs. And so many of them are struggling to get here particularly when the bus rides and the trains aren't running on schedule. So some of them will show up right at 7 and they've been trying to get there for an hour and a half or 2 hours. So our greeters, if somebody shows up as we're closing down, as long as we still have food left, we run them in and they get them a to-go box at least. So, but yes, it's an issue. And we aren't going to be driving people home because it isn't safe. It's not a smart thing to do. And we knew that. There was a lot of debate before they took off. And one of our greeters is a retired policeman from Lakewood, in fact, high up in their deal. And it's been wonderful having him as a greeter because he has a real good feeling for possible problems that might occur, which have happened sometimes.
Well, any other questions? Great. Well, thank you so much, Linda, for the
Thank
presentation.
you all for having us, and thank you so much for the grants. I can't tell you how wonderful they are.
Thank you for everything you're doing for the community. Next up on the agenda is the consent agenda. Consent agenda items can be adopted by a simple motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to a vote on the motion. Any consent agenda item may be removed at the request of a council member. Got a long list here. Resolution 78, 2024, approving an Eighth Amendment to an intergovernmental agreement between the city and Mile High Flood District for design and construction of drainage and flood control improvements for South Platte River at Reynolds Landing. B, Resolution 75, 2024, approving a memorandum of understanding between the Littleton Police Department and Douglas County Department of Human Services Child Welfare. C, Ordinance 16 of 2024, an ordinance on first reading amending Ordinance Number 24, Series of 2023, appropriating funds for the 2024 annual budget for all municipal purposes of the City of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, State of Colorado, for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2024, and ending December 31st, 2024. D, ordinance 17 of 2024, ordinance on first reading of the City of Littleton, Colorado as the governing body of the City of Littleton Sewer Utility Enterprise, amending the 2024 Sewer Utility Enterprise budget. E, resolution 77, 2024, approving an amendment to the sub-recipient grant agreement between the City of Littleton and Bridge House in the amount of $1.5 million in support of the Tri-Cities Ready to Work program. F, Resolution 80 of 2024, approving an agreement with the City of Inglewood for the City Ditch Crossing Agreement for Littleton Nichols Avenue roadway improvements. G, Resolution 79 of 2024, approving a memorandum of understanding between the Littleton Police Department and the FBI Rocky Mountain Regional Computer Forensics Laboratory for the forensic analysis of digital evidence. H, ID 24-156, a motion to approve minutes of the June 4th, 2024 regular meeting of City Council.
Mayor, I move to approve resolutions A through H.
Second. I have a motion to approve all consent agenda items. It's not just resolutions,
Yes,
but
can we
items
have
A through H.
clarification,
Yes,
please?
items A through H.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Council, any discussion on the motion to approve the consent agenda?
Just want to say thank you to the city attorney for clarifying for me that the MOU with Douglas County is only for serving children who live in the city of Littleton in the county, in Douglas County. Thank you, Reed, for that.
Voting is open.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
All right. It's almost 8 o'clock. Council, do we need a 5-minute break? All right. We'll reconvene at 8 o'clock. Yeah. All right, it is 8 o'clock, and we are back from our brief recess. Next up, we have general business. I think we have 3 items under general business tonight. First up, we have ID 24-167, a motion adopting the Kettering Gallup Master Plan. We'll have a presentation from staff here, and then we can have some discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening again, Council. This is intended as your next and potentially final review of the Kettering Gallup Master Plan. This plan's been in the works for quite a while, as you know, with an extensive public engagement process. And as I noted earlier, Council's last study session looking at a draft of the plan was in March of this year. So at that time, Council had a significant discussion of the plan. A couple particular questions had come up at that session, and Council and staff has gone back and done some more work on those questions, and we're prepared to talk through those. I just want to, I think, step back for a minute, give a little bit of big picture context for this one. This is a concept plan. This is a vision for the Kettering Gallup Park and our eventual cultural connection complex for the city. And there's a lot of exciting stuff here, but at this point are very few resources identified for this project. I think you'll see that it's approximately, again, these are high-level preliminary numbers, but could be a $30 million total project to implement. And I know staff has done some work to identify some grants. We could have 10% or so. So I know I've heard questions about what could some first chomps, some first bites at this be, and we'll have that for you. You'll hear those ideas too. But I just want to kind of say this is really setting that vision. It's easy when we're looking at a plan like this to think about design and some of the specific features, things that we want to see. But it really is about the big picture concept and big picture vision. And as we move forward, Council will be seeing design and will be able to further hone in on what we want for these various components. So tonight what we're looking for is your consideration of the overall vision, hopefully adoption of the plan. And then if Council does have any consensus about, say, first phase, which area of this kind of broad vision and concept that you see, it would be helpful because Council will be able to consider some of this funding in your budget process this fall, and staff can help you to be ready for that. If there are kind of clear priorities for areas of the project that you might like to see first. With that, I'll turn it over to our staff and consulting team. I'll turn it over to Brent Souderland, our interim public works director, who can also formally introduce Kelsey and our consultant. Thanks.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'll just be turning it over to Kelsey Stanfield, who is our manager of open space, or grounds, open space and natural resources, and also Jay, is it Hanky? Hank, who is with Flow Design Collaborations, and they'll be doing the main part of the presentation.
Thank you. So what you're seeing tonight is not significantly different from what you saw back in March. Is it on? Okay.
Just pull it a little closer there.
Not too different from what you saw in March. We did take council feedback and went out for some additional public comment. And so at the end of this presentation, you'll be seeing what the results of those additional public outreach was.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thanks for having us back again. I'm Jay Hank with Flow Design Collaborative. We're the landscape architecture firm that's leading the design effort in partnership with the city and South Suburban Parks and Recreation District. As has been mentioned, we were here in March. We went through the entire plan with you. We're not intended to necessarily rehash and go back through the overall plan. There weren't significant changes that were made. And so what we want to try to do tonight is really go through the summary of the feedback that we've heard from the community following the modifications and some clarifications that we made based on the comments that we received that when we were here last. There were some questions and some clarifications that were more focused on the library lane connection. And so our intent with the final master plan was to go back out to the community and allow open-ended responses in relationship to any questions or comments the community had that may want to be addressed as a part of the final documentation of the master plan. And so what we did in response to the questions that were received from council the last time that we were here is we developed some additional graphics and asked some pointed specific questions regarding library lane and what some of the preferred options might be for how that portion of this area in the park could be modified or incorporated into the plan as we move forward. We received roughly 170, I think, additional responses to the online survey that we provided. I think we had approximately 36 open-ended responses as a part of that response as well. I might end up hopping around a little bit in here in the presentation itself, but as I mentioned, I don't know that I necessarily need to go through all of the key master plan recommendations. Please, if you have questions or anything specific, let me know. As I noted, most of the questions that we received here at council were related to number 7 and the proposed options for how library lane might be modified between what we're calling the cultural core, currently like Gallup Gardens, and Gallup Park itself. We, as a reminder, are proposing to remove a portion of the existing parking between Bemis Library and Gallup Gardens in order to provide a more cohesive pedestrian connection between those spaces. And in doing so, we've proposed a sort of shared street concept that would allow for parking to remain in this area, but then would also allow for that space to be utilized for other events, other activities could be closed down. And so there was additional clarification on how that could potentially happen, as well as some questions for whether or not there's support for potential options to close down library lane to through traffic between Datura Street and Gallup Street. And so those were some of the specific questions that we put back out to the community. I'll just keep this up here for a moment. We'll focus on the area to, the western half and the cultural core area around Bemis Library and Library Lane just south of that cultural core. We'll zoom in here. What we ended up doing is we came back, and I'll have some additional graphics that you guys had as well that we'll talk through, but what we did is we took a little bit closer look at how we could potentially propose different parking scenarios within Library Lane from the area that's hatched a little bit darker gray, right? So the entrance to Bemis Library east to Gallup Street, where we're calling the shared street improvements. The intent would be that that's the area that could potentially be closed down, could be utilized a little bit differently if there are special events going on, and effectively support pedestrian experience a little bit different than the rest of the area, as well as an opportunity to close down through traffic at that connection as well. If desired, that could be on a permanent or temporary basis. This is where I'm going to skip around a little bit because these graphics aren't necessarily as critical to the conversation. Happy to come back to them if there's any of these that you would like to look at more specifically. But these were additional graphics that were developed to help present what these ideas and these concepts related to some of these other improvements within this park.
Excuse me for a second. If you could just spend a few seconds on each of the big components, just to
Sure.
just to remind us of what they are.
Yep, absolutely.
Thanks.
So this image is a depiction of the cultural core area, looking generally from the Bemis Library area toward Gallup Gardens. You can see the sculpture in the background that we would certainly want to remain in place. And the opportunity with the cultural core is really to bring some of the more specific amenities within the park complex into this area where we know we have a lot of current traffic and visitors to the park itself. And rather than having them dispersed throughout the site, bring them into a little bit more of a unified space. And so this space incorporates a proposed restroom facility and picnic pavilion, adjacent to what you're seeing here as a enlarged and improved playground space, as well as a direct connection to an enhanced Gallup Gardens. And also incorporates the cultural connection, which was really the impetus for this broader study of the entire campus, as opposed to just the connection between Bemis Library and Littleton Museum. And so that's really what falls kind of in the background, making that stronger pedestrian connection between these two cultural facilities. This next graphic is really a depiction of the east side of Kettering Lake. And so really the desire here is to try to rejuvenate and incorporate improved vegetation and wildlife habitat and spaces for people to be able to stroll and create an additional kind of passive amenity on that east side of the park, as well as off in the far distance you can see another picnic pavilion that would be adjacent to and overlooking Kettering Lake. And so this is really just a depiction of what that could potentially look like. Off in the background of this, you can actually see also the boardwalk, and that's what's depicted in this as an opportunity to provide further pedestrian connection throughout the park. Currently, you cannot walk the full perimeter of the lake because of the access at Littleton Museum. And so, you know, it's something that we see quite frequently is that people do like to walk around lakes. And so this actually provides that connection, provides an opportunity and a different amenity to be able to interact with the lake and with this space as well on the west side of Kettering Lake. This graphic is really the depiction of the connection along the south side of the Littleton Museum. That's a pretty critical connection between the neighborhoods and Gallup Park. It's currently kind of pushed up against the property boundary, heavily shaded in the wintertime, so it becomes icy, pretty tight with the adjacent museum fence. And so in partnership with the museum, we've identified an opportunity to be able to expand that space a little bit into the museum grounds without really impacting their ability to function, shift it away from that fence so that it can be out in the sun, have a little bit more solar gain in the wintertime, create a little bit wider path that's going to be a smoother connection than the asphalt that's out there today, but provides a much stronger connection between Kettering Lake, the southern side of Gallup Park, and between the neighborhoods and the communities on that portion of the park itself. So one of the questions pertaining to Gallup Street was really, you know, how can that be developed? What does that look like? What are the materials? And it's really pretty open. And as City Manager noted, this is a vision plan, so we don't have specific details for exactly what that could be, but we envision it being something a little bit more special. You know, we want to remove that asphalt. We want to create a space that is pedestrian friendly, inviting, and is more focused on the pedestrian than it is on the vehicle, so the vehicles really kind of feel as a guest in that space as opposed to kind of being the main component. And so these are 4 different examples along the Front Range, so pretty local in terms of different ways that shared streets or Woernorfs or there's different terms for how these can get used, but spaces that will incorporate both vehicle traffic as well as pedestrian and bicycles. It may happen at the same time. You may be able to close them down and use them as festivals. And so from left to right, these are different options and opportunities that depict different types of materials. The 39th Avenue Greenway, one of the more local examples, relatively new. It's a concrete space using just different colored concrete to create some interest. And the Fillmore Plaza down in Cherry Creek uses brick pavers. And so you can see these in different scenarios where vehicles are traveling through them. We've got them closed down for festival streets. Linden Street is a relatively recently reconstructed portion of downtown Fort Collins, again using pedestrian pavers. And then the Vermijo and Sierra Madre streets in Colorado Springs is very similar, using kind of a higher quality material and creating spaces that can function as well for pedestrians as well as incorporating vehicular traffic when necessary. I think the thing that we want to stress is that, again, the way that these are designed and constructed is to really focus on that pedestrian experience in such that we don't have raised curbs. These spaces are flush so that when these are closed down or when pedestrians are moving between the spaces, it's really a smooth transition between what can be a more protected pedestrian zone when there are vehicle traffic, when there are vehicles in those spaces, into and through that space. And so when it is shut down, it feels like a very cohesive pedestrian corridor that you're moving through as you move between, some of those more protected spaces as well. So the intent here was, again, to help explain what we were proposing as it related to the shared street, both along Library Lane as well as Gallup Street. These are the same graphics that were incorporated into the preliminary plan. This is a depiction on the bottom left of the current cross-section and the way that Gallup Street functions. This is generally to the east of Gallup Gardens, so between Gallup Gardens and the museum parking lot. And the upper right really starts to depict what that could look like when in a different configuration that starts to focus a little bit more on the pedestrian and bicycle use, and makes the second, while still allowing vehicles to move through this space, it's not the primary use necessarily, right? So they function cohesively. What we did do is focus a little bit more in this communication with the community on how Library Lane could be configured. So this is the existing configuration of that eastern portion of Library Lane. It's 90-degree head-in parking with 2 lanes of bidirectional traffic moving east and west between Datura Street and Gallup Street. The original depiction of this space in the preliminary master plan kept a very similar parking configuration as we're trying to, again, reallocate the spaces that will be removed in the development of the cultural core. And so this is the image that you saw in the preliminary plan as well. And so through those conversations and the questions that we received, what we did is we took a look at what that might look like if we actually still kept parking, but we made it parallel. So it would reduce the number of spaces that would be available. It would still allow parking to take place there, but it would increase our opportunities to provide a little bit more or stronger pedestrian connection within that space itself. And so not changing the overall cross-section at all, this would allow a little bit better pedestrian connection through that, through all times, while still allowing some parking, but not the same quantity of parking as proposed in the previous plan. The other question that we then asked was whether or not there would be support for actually eliminating this section of Library Lane in its entirety. And what we ended up receiving in responses was a relatively even split of feedback in response to that option 1 of 90-degree parking, the parallel parking, or a complete removal. And so that's currently where we sit with that. I think the important thing to note with that is that what we're currently showing in this final master plan does not necessarily limit any of these options or opportunities as we would move forward into future final design. And so any of these could really take place, and I think would warrant additional and further communication to really better understand for what is the most appropriate use of that space, and how would it be preferred to move forward with it in a final configuration. We did receive some feedback regarding a closure, and it seems like through the responses that we received that there would be some support for a closure of through traffic through that location. Doesn't necessarily mean an elimination of that space in its entirety, but in terms of just how that traffic flow would function coming off of Gallup Street and into that library parking as opposed to off of Datura Street. And then this is just a more specific summary of the responses that we received in the open-ended response opportunity in the survey itself. And so quite a bit of support just in the overall pedestrian improvements, trying to provide better connections and connectivity through all portions of the park itself. There is some concern regarding the number of parking spaces in and around the library, the ball fields, the playground themselves, as well as potential impacts to the access of through that space. We did receive some requests for bathrooms, and we're proposing that in here as well. We think that's important. We've also received good support for, it was limited on this, but we've received a lot of great support on improved native vegetation and habitat throughout the park spaces themselves as well. And I think our sense is that we have certainly heard positive support for the master plan in general, and then the quotes are just some of the specific comments that we heard coming out of that survey response itself. So that happy to go through any of the other larger aspects of the master plan, but this was the area of focus coming out of the last council session, and so that was really what we focused with in terms of additional specific questions to the community.
Jay, could you please put up the slide with the whole park, just so when council has their conversation, they can see all the features. Thanks. And that's all I
Council,
have.
anyone have any questions, comments? Yep, I'll put Councilmember Reichert.
What are the statues of council members going?
Bus. I think we need a row of bus. Down the culture, that'll be the big cultural connection of the bus of all the council members. So I want to take a step back and say I really appreciate all the work, and I appreciate the prior council getting this work started and supporting this work through now. I think this is really important. I think you all know that I literally live on the park, and I'm on the park every day. And this is a key part of our community, and there are literally hundreds of people that are using this park every day, and I think it's a really valuable component of our community, and I really appreciate our interest and willingness to invest in this park. I think I want to echo what Jim said at the beginning. What we're really doing now, in my mind, is creating the menu of potential capital investments for the park that we will be kind of making decisions about and prioritizing over the next 10 years. And so for our constituents who are like, when is this going to happen, and is it all going to happen? I think it may not all happen. It's really, there's going to be components, and as a council, we're going to have to agree on kind of which, if any of these components are priorities for capital investments, while we're also prioritizing capital investments in downtown Littleton and prioritizing capital investments along Broadway. And we're going to have a set of investments we're going to be asked to do on Littleton Boulevard. I mean, there's just a lot of options for us, and we're going to just have to make some choices. But I'm really grateful that we're having this conversation, because I think this is really important to our community. And so, at the highest level, I absolutely want to approve this plan today and for us to move forward with this work, with the understanding that we're actually going to continue to work on this for a long time. Jim asked for what are our priorities, and we have not met about this, and we haven't had any discussions. I have met with my neighbors, and I personally think my very top priority is the lake. The lake right now it has two huge problems. It is continuing to go down in its level. It's down at least a dozen feet, and I think it's more. But the other challenge that we have not addressed at all is that it is got a very, very high level of nutrients, a high level of algae. It is a dead end for water. And I would like us to continue to think about a vision for how we could have water flow through the lake. And the vision for that would be finding another source of non-potable water, another well, have that water go into the lake, and then use that water to replace the current potable water we're using to water Kettering Park. And in the big picture, it will be a large investment. Every well we've drilled is $1 million. But I think if we can get some flow of water through the lake, it will both increase the water quality and the quality of that lake, but it will also, in the long run, reduce our use of potable water to support our landscape around the park. So I would, for me, the top priority is to continue working on the lake. It is not at a sustainable place. And while the current well that we have is putting water into the lake, it's not putting enough water in to keep the level from going down. And that current well is not a very stable well. It lasted less than 10 years before it sanded up. And I just don't think we can rely on that to keep the lake full. And I just want to keep working on that. The other priority I have is that given our Safer Streets initiative, if we finish this year without a couple crosswalks on Gallup, we've missed an opportunity. Gallup just needs some crosswalks on it. And I know we have these longer investments around creating this streetscape, but whatever streetscape we create, we have to keep that traffic slow. Right now, cars are going up and down Gallup very quickly, and there's a lot of people who don't seem to care about bottoming out on that one dip. And we need to continue to focus on slowing traffic on Gallup. And then I don't think I'm in harmony with all of my council members around kind of focusing on reducing parking around the library and the park. It doesn't make sense to me that we're trying to make this as a more attractive place for people to come to, and then making it harder for people to park and come to the park. That just doesn't make sense to me. And, since we've started this work, at least twice in the last 4 months, when there is events being held on the baseball field, the soccer field, and at the library, all the parking spots that are currently there have been used. So there are times when there are peaks in use where we need and use all the parking spots that are there. And so I am not as confident in our in reducing the parking around that part of the park. I think there are times where we are trying to get more people to use the park. I absolutely think we need to increase the ability to park bicycles around the park, but reducing parking for cars, I'm not sure I 100% support. And I will tell you that literally while I was talking, my wife texted a picture of her and my daughters walking around the park with the lake in the background, and they're very cute, and if anybody wants me to share it with them, I will. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys putting up with my comments. And like I said, I really appreciate this work. I think this is a really valuable part of our community. There are hundreds of people I see using it every day, and I think I want to continue that. I also want to say I was worried my neighbors were going to be upset about the natural grass going in closer to the homes, and they're not. They were totally cool with that. They were like, this is space that needs to be used better. We're excited about that. So I'm really, I really appreciate all the work. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that feedback.
Thanks.
Mayor?
Anybody else?
Mayor?
Yeah.
Just for your reference, if it would be helpful, Kelsey is prepared to speak to some of the kind of cost pieces. We didn't include that in the presentation, but if for council conversation, if it would be helpful, we can certainly kind of give a flavor for what those different cost pieces are and what might be kind of recommended for a first piece, if it's helpful to the council discussion.
I'm just going to guess it's expensive. We don't have the money, and it'll get more expensive in the future. Does anyone want to hear?
I'd like to
specific
hear
questions, but you want to hear about?
I'd like to hear what your high-level suggestion is about a phased-in approach, like which piece you would take first.
Absolutely. So the total project is estimated around $30 million. Of course, that is a very high level.
30.99 is what I think is what it was.
That would be correct, yes. The cultural core section, which really is that library lane section going north, is around $10 million. And so, as the city manager mentioned, we don't have that full funding source, but we do have some dedicated funding that could be utilized for this project. We're estimating between $2 and $4 million as a phase one, and it was mentioned earlier that this project really kicked off as a desire to improve that pedestrian connection between the library and museum and across to Gallup in general. And so while we don't have a full $10 million to do all of it at once, staff's recommendation would be to prioritize that initial goal of improving that pedestrian connection. And so narrowing down that, that what's all captured in that cultural core to fit into the funding that we have available to us.
So that would include the Gallup crossing, correct? And there would be drainage, because one of the reasons for the dip, I've learned, is that it does facilitate some drainage, but there's a real lack of infrastructure there now. So this would prompt us to do that work and also get rid of the dip and have some of that kind of curbless space that might facilitate that crossing further.
And can I assume that other funding sources could be South Suburban Parks and Rec, Arapahoe County, potentially some grants? I assume with Kettering Lake, Mile High Flood District would be a part of that as well.
I don't know about Mile High for Kettering.
Would they be, or no?
I can answer that one.
Yeah, so Mile High would probably not.
Is that outside of the
yeah.
plat? Okay.
Yeah, because it's not really a drainage facility. It's a closed system, really.
But as far as other funding sources, we do have funding through Arapahoe County Share Back funds, which are dedicated to park and open space related projects. South Suburban has committed to being a funding partner, and then right off, initially we would go after an Arapahoe County open space grant, but I think there's definitely additional funding sources that could be pursued.
Great.
So that 2 to 4 million you were talking about for the core would be mainly for Gallup Street?
So some combination of the Gallup Library Lane intersection to improve the crossing between Bemis Library and the museum.
Thanks.
Councilmember Peters?
I love the boardwalk idea. I'm sure it's pricey, but I think that a lot more people will actually use this if you can walk all the way around the lake. That makes good sense to me. When I look at this, though, I feel like I see way too much sod that we are watering, which I don't like as we move forward with a big plan. I mean, that Kettering Oval is so huge, and then even the green in front of the library that we currently have just feels like a lot of grass that we're watering, and I'm all about xeric plants and more native things and natural grasses and less watering on sod. I'm also with Councilmember Reichart about the parking. It doesn't make sense to me to get rid of that much parking, so I'm probably not a fan of closing Library Lane completely. I think temporary closures make sense, but I feel like that library parking lot is full all the time. So even getting rid of the parking for the playground feels risky to me when it seems like there's other places we could put it that would get rid of sod. But sorry to come in at the end and say that because I didn't engage at all with these surveys. So, but I love the boardwalk.
Councilmember Ryden?
Yeah, I agree with Councilmember Peters about the watering. I think trying to move toward more watering less is definitely a way to go, and that is a lot. And as someone who walks around that park probably every day and gets watered by those sprinklers, I think maybe there's other ways we can manage that. I actually don't think eliminating a little bit of that parking is a problem. As someone, again, who is around there regularly, that area actually is pretty empty most of the time. It is full for events, that is true. And so what I liked about what you proposed with that, there still are spaces for some of those events, but I think there's workarounds for that, and so that doesn't concern me. Great job. It's a beautiful plan, and I'm excited to see next steps.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, since I was the one that threw flags on the play last time, I figured I should speak out about it. But no, this is fantastic. Like the revisions you made, the work you put into coming up with some of these options, the way you posed and framed some of the questions, regardless of how hard it is to interpret that data. No, I really appreciate you going back out there and doing it. And it is a difficult decision to make because like we are talking about conceptual designs and plans, and even with the best artistic renderings, it is hard to know how things will look, feel, and function if they were to be implemented. based on some of this data, again, it's very difficult to know if there's an exact solution, but I think what you showed here in the option 2 with the parallel parking, we're not losing a ton of space, but we are gaining a little bit more of that cultural core connection, which I do think is kind of the priority. I think that was kind of the intention when we embarked on the process even longer ago than our last presentation, was to really focus on connectivity between the two facilities and making sure that pedestrians were safe, not just safe and comfortable, but that was a place that they wanted to be. And allowing for more of that space to be occupied by pedestrian crossings, I think, is really reflected in how option 2 in the library lane view looks. I think there, yes, is some sacrifice of parking, but I think we would be surprised by how clever people are about finding parking when they really want to or need to. I think in terms of the highest priorities, Councilmember Record, I absolutely hear you on needing some longer term solutions for Kettering, and even if we might disagree on the means and methods, I think ultimately Kettering Lake is changing. It is changing because of not only the facilities and equipment that we have, the money that we have to invest in it, but groundwater is never going to be a sustainable resource for this in the entirety of this park. And I feel that putting it's not to say that it's not important and it's not a significant amenity that needs to be improved in the long run, but that its state of fluctuation right now is also saying, to me, it says, wait and see if this facility itself stabilizes with the natural landscape around it, and then plan more of that hardscape infrastructure to accommodate what that water resource naturally comes into equilibrium with the environment. So I would be for investing higher degree of funding and prioritization around that cultural core, pedestrian, areas, and looking at the option 2 for the parallel parking, with the hope that we could maybe close it off for events or permanently if we ever needed to. But otherwise, I think there's so much about this plan that we all probably agree on. So again, to Flo and to the parks, folks, that open space folks, thank you for your time that you put into it.
Councilmember Grove?
I think the plan's great. Thank you for going back out to the community and finding some answers. Hopefully, we will approve the plan tonight. I would support it. In terms of looking at the phase-in, I kind of go with your recommendation that we start with the cultural core and Gallup Street and look to you for that kind of things. Again, not that, as Councilmember Barr said, that Kettering isn't important, but I think the original intent of the project was to, enhance that connection between the museum and the library. As for Library Lane, I realize that the parking lot is not full all the time, but when we need it, we need it. And remember, the director of the museum came and spoke with us and said how important it is for like story time. I mean, when things are busy, and I've had citizens come to me and say, anecdotally, I really want to be able to drive along that. I think it might be a nice idea to look at some xeriscaping, but that's nothing that I think would prohibit us from doing anything tonight. So those are my comments on this.
Councilmember Driscoll.
Yes, thank you. Yes, again, love the plan. I appreciate the reduction of the lake itself. I'm wondering if we didn't go far enough. If I don't drive by that or see that lake as much as Robert, but I know it's a 30% reduction. I know neighbors had a concern about that. I don't know if that lake can't sustain what we have now. Do we go down another 5%, another 10%? Just a thought out there. But the rest of it, I think, is really well thought out. And, I think finding out the priorities and as Pam said, maybe starting with that cultural core section where that's going to get the most bang for the buck for early on, I'd be in favor of that.
Yeah, I agree with most of what everyone said here. And I think as this is a high-level kind of vision of what the park could look like, more of a menu of options of what we may have, and it, you know, what actually is there could very well be very different. You know, I support this. I think we can all have our own opinions and nitpick on different little things, and but the general gist of what's there is good. You know, I think that the probably the three things that, you know, I would love to see changed, you know, as we get through this process a little bit further would be the library lane. I think, you know, having that closed off for traffic would work. We don't even know how many cars drive through there right now. I mean that would be part of the information gathering as we go through there. I mean, very few cars really actually drive through there. And like Councilmember Ryan said, there's not that many that park there. And, you know, we're not losing that many parking spots because there is new parking being added on the east side there where there's no parking right now on Library Lane. So I think there can be a few things to mitigate that. But I think that would help with that kind of connection between all parts of the park with people walking and biking there. And to echo Councilmember Driscoll's, you know, the lake, and we'll get to that. I mean, this is just a rough drawing of what it might be. You know, we'll have to get through the numbers with what the water actually looks like. It might be that size, it might be smaller, it might be bigger, but that'll be more in the details with all the water engineers getting in there to see what can actually work. And then I think the other one would be the boardwalk. You know, I think the boardwalk is cool looking, but it probably is expensive. I think, you know, maybe a more appropriate solution is just to continue along the shore, you know, skirt the museum there and try to figure out exactly how it could work there rather than making a boardwalk that go out to those islands. I know we're talking about getting out there was a habitat for nesting birds, and if we're providing a bridge for predators to get there, you know, that would, you know, change the environment for them there. So, but generally speaking, I think it looks good. You know, I think if I had, you know, one gripe overall with the whole thing is it is not a huge dramatic change. It's a little bit tweaking here and there. I know one of our public commenters talking about Project Downtown earlier said, you know, we just need a haircut, not a facelift. And I think some of the things that we do, I would love to see some more dramatic change. I mean, big things. You know, I was just at a birthday party for my daughter over at Centennial Park. And just the things that they have there, the splash pad, the amphitheaters, the hills, it's just something that all those amenities we don't have in Littleton, but just to think outside rather than just tweaking little things. Not that I dislike this, but I think that opportunities like this when we have master plans are great for saying, hey, let's just completely rethink how we use this. And it's there with the cultural core, but it's not maybe as dramatic as, you know, might really be able to do. But I really like the playground and that the little amphitheater and library park right there, I think, and that's where I think the important part is to start at that cultural core, really make that connection between the museum and the library right now, because it's difficult to cross the street there because people, I mean, we have what looks like a crosswalk that goes down to the road. There's nothing on the other end. I mean, there's really no way to get, so it's seeing people with strollers and wheelchairs try to get there. It's not a friendly place to be right now, so I think we need to make that connection because people often go between the library and the museum, so that's where I would focus on the attention there. Any other follow-up comments or rebuttals or?
No, I don't think that would be helpful. I appreciate it.
Does staff need any other? Yeah, any?
No, thank you for your consideration. I know you still have some action that you might take, but this is helpful too for budget as we get set for September. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be fun discussion when we look at the numbers, trying to figure out where to find that money from. So that's the next big. Yeah, I guarantee you this is going to be not $30 million when it's all said and done.
Mayor, I make a motion to approve the Kettering Gallup Master Plan, ID number 24-167.
I will second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I know we all said our pieces at a time. Yep, Councilmember Peters?
Can I just ask, I know I'm running out of newbie cards to play, but how does approving of the plan without seeing some of the changes that we mentioned, does it do anything? Are we just saying go on in peace?
Well, I don't think that there's not gonna be any construction coming out. I'm sure when they comes back, it'll be like, hey, we wanna, you know, we heard from council that we're looking at the cultural core. Can we, you know, we'll have to approve funding and all sorts of stuff. So it'll all come back to us as we get into things, yeah. Correct? So you're not gonna go out there and start bulldozing stuff right now? Okay. Great. All right, well, we do have a motion and a second to approve the, adopt the Kettering Gallup Master Plan. Voting's open. Councilmember Wright.
Bless you. The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you, council and staff. All right, up next, item B for general business, Resolution 81 of 2024, approving a construction contract between the City of Littleton and Inliner Solutions LLC for the 2024 Sanitary Sewer Interceptor Rehabilitation Project. Brent's moving over to the main seat here, the hot
Right.
seat, I guess, so turn it over to the city manager to introduce this.
Thank you, Jay. So thanks, Mayor, and I have lost my my connection here to my computer, my network security thing, so I'm winging it. So this
Just what your staff loves to hear you say. isn't it?
right, inspiring confidence left and right. No, this project is on your agenda because we are trying to retain fidelity with the commitment that we made when we adopted the new procurement ordinance. That we are trying to move as much as we think is reasonable to your consent calendar. But when there are projects that are a little larger or more significant than others, we do want to bring those forward to you on the under general business. So this is one of those. It is wastewater system work. It is it's a sewer interceptor pipe project, lining project, and so I'm going to turn it over because that's about the extent of my technical knowledge. Turn it over to Brent, who can explain the project, and we'll be seeking your approval to move forward with this project.
Yeah, so good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. So what I'm presenting on tonight is our 2024 Sanitary Sewer Interceptor Rehabilitation Project. And so why is it necessary to rehab our interceptor line? The line is mainly of concrete and clay. Concrete deteriorates over time due to some of the chemical reactions from the wastewater that runs through it. The clay pipe is a little more chemically resistant, but it's more brittle and it tends to break and crack over time. So we really need to rehab this pipe so we prevent any pipe collapses and future sinkholes in the roadway. So lining, I guess I'll explain what the lining process is. What they do is they pull a liner between the manholes. And the technique that we're using now is basically they pump it full of air and it expands and basically sticks to the edge of the pipe. And then they use UV lights that they drag through the pipe, and that cures it and makes it, I guess, a solid new pipe. And so the life expectancy of that kind of lining is around 50 years. So that's just a little bit on the process. So what is the Littleton Interceptor? So I kind of think of the Interceptor as like the Santa Fe of our sanitary system, really. So it collects all of the sewage from our 8 connector districts, plus all the sewer from the city of Littleton, and basically conveys it to the South Platte Renew. The Interceptor ranges in size from 24 to 66 inches in diameter. And the age of the Interceptor line is basically between like 65 years old to around 40 years old. So it's been around a long time. And so this map basically just shows what with the Interceptor in general. It basically starts at Lee Gulch and runs along Santa Fe and then along the South Platte until it ends up at the plant. It's basically about 5.4 miles long of pipe. So just a little history on the rehabilitation. So it started in 2008, basically at the north end near the plant. I think they basically started big and went small. Obviously, the pipes get bigger as you get closer to the plant. They spent $1 or $2 million a year, and then kind of moved southward. And then in 2018, we actually videoed the entire interceptor. And so from 2019 on, that's how we kind of focused on where to do the rehab. And obviously, construction costs are escalating, and so it gets more expensive every year. I guess the good news I have for you is this 2024 rehabilitation project completes the lining of the entire 5.4 miles of interceptor. So then we can move on to more projects probably within the local part of the city. And this is just the rehab map that shows, the years when rehab was done. This year's is in blue, and so we have a lot of 24-inch along Santa Fe that we're rehabbing, and then a larger pipe south of Union. I believe it's a 54-inch pipe that we're rehabbing this year. And then we're also doing a small section in Lee Gulch. There's 3 sections of 24-inch concrete pipe there that we're also lining as a part of this. So the project was bid through the Rocky Mountain e-purchasing system. We received 2 bids, and the low bid was for Inliner Solutions for roughly $2.9 million. And this project is funded out of the Sewer Enterprise Fund. So alternatives would be basically to delay this project or maybe go to excavation and replacing the pipe. Both of those options would obviously put it at greater risk for failure and obviously delay and, cause it the cost would be higher in the future. So we think this complies with the City Council strategic outcomes of sustainable community with natural beauty and high quality governance. And it also addresses needs that were identified in our sanitary sewer master plan. So staff's recommendation is the approval of the construction contract with Inliner Solutions. Do you have any questions?
Council, any questions? Councilmember Driscoll?
Yeah, Brett, what's the failure of once they line these, do they guarantee the work? So if a pipe does collapse still?
I have not seen any that have collapsed.
Okay.
This lining has been going on since really like the early 2000s.
Right, I'm familiar with it. I'm just wondering if they guarantee against it.
Yeah, I've not seen them fail. It's really a rigid system once it gets cured.
Right. So why isn't Denver Water doing that instead of digging up the street?
So water lines are a little different.
Okay.
You can line some water lines. A lot of times they do a technique called pipe bursting, where they'll drag basically a bullet and pull a new line through like that for water lines. So it's a little different than sanitary sewer.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Well, I looked up Santa Fe, and Santa Fe means holy faith. So this is our holy faith of our sanitary sewer system, and I really appreciate that metaphor a lot.
We don't want to break the faith in this case.
Mayor Pro Tem. Do you suspect that you're going to basically be using this kind of liner technology in future sanitary work in the future, as we progress through our collection system? And the reason I suggest that is because I know in future meetings we are going to look at some kind of more streamlined procurement methods, so we don't have to necessarily approve every pipe by pipe segment if we've already kind of decided on. We've already allocated budget and technology and looked at, what options there are out there.
Right. So our plan for rehab in the future is we'll move to what we call our trunk lines, which is basically our 15 to 24-inch pipes. And we'll use the same exact method of lining. This UV cure is, it's actually really environmentally friendly at this point because there's no water or anything that runs through it. So it will be continuing to do this kind of thing throughout the local system.
Yeah, it was just a note maybe for city management staff that when we talk contracting and procurement kind of methods in the future, that we look at some of these opportunities to help streamline for public works to get these in place faster, because that'll save us time and money. So anyway, but yeah, this is great. Thank you much.
Councilmember Reichert.
So this is paid for by our enterprise fund, the sanitary sewer enterprise fund. So that fund receives funds, I think, from our own residents who are paying on their sewer bill, but it also receives funds from the other districts that are using our trunk line. How are we allocating kind of costs between us and the other? And that may not be a fair question, like to spring on you without letting you know it's coming. But I guess I want, the key thing, my goal is that everybody who uses the sewer system should pay an equal amount. Like everybody, because everybody who's participating in this, all the 8 districts are kind of using the Santa Fe line kind of to the same amount.
Yes, so what I do know is that the connector districts do pay a fee to use our interceptor line, and then we in turn use that to do this rehab. I don't know exactly the breakouts.
The rate setting model does accommodate, allow for, require that there is that cost sharing based on a proportionate use of the system.
How much? Okay, great. I think that's really important. I don't think we want to carry all the water as the owner, or as the kind of the operator of the system. But I think the other thing is to be clear that this is not going to result in higher sewer bills for our residents anytime in the near future.
Correct. In fact, it's important, and I will take the opportunity to always remind council and the public that we do manage our wastewater fund in such a way that you may see fund balances, and we do carry a significant fund balance in that fund because we're looking at long-term costs for system replacement and the, infrastructure that we need. So we are planning over a long period of time to address those needs without, sharp changes in rates each year.
So, but there will be rate increases, but not just because of this.
Right, not driven by this. It's built into a long-term model for system improvements.
And those connector districts also do pay a premium over what the Littleton and Inglewood ownership, model does. So, we pay less than our outside connector districts per person.
To that point, not to add another piece to the conversation, it is something that we have been taking a look at, the city of Littleton, also with our partners Inglewood, in terms of trying to standardize some of those rates that some of those connector districts are paying, because it is true, there are some that are paying a different rate than others, and the end result is the end result. So that is something that we have been working through.
Well, thank you. I appreciate all the comments. I think, I think it's a shared priority that we don't pay extra from the connector districts, and we have to pay our fair share, but not pay extra. So I appreciate this work that everybody's doing. Thank you.
I just have 2 questions. One, can you just pull up either of those 2 maps that were up there? I just want to, if you could describe kind of the length of the interceptor that's being replaced with this. It's not the entirety of it, it's just sections, correct?
So is this the map you're referring to, Mayor, or is it
Either of the maps would work, but yeah.
Right. So I guess, what's the question?
So
I'm sorry.
what parts of it just said certain parts that have not been replaced, so it's just going to be chunk pieces of it here and there, or the entire interceptor is going to be replaced in its entirety from that?
Oh, yeah, so this project finishes the lining of the entire length of the interceptor. So they had jumped around in the past, kind of hitting the bad areas first, and so this is basically just the last portion of the project.
Okay, and so like on the other map, the rehab map with all those other dots, that makes it appear that it's continuous, but I'm sure there's gaps in there that haven't been. Okay. And those go through, speaking of the other interceptor districts, it looks like a lot of this is within the city of Inglewood.
Yeah, so the interceptor actually runs through Inglewood and Sheridan, but we have an easement and we actually own the interceptor line, and so it's our responsibility to maintain.
But those municipalities would also use the interceptor as well, because their lines feed into this main interceptor line, correct?
Yeah, there are other connector districts within Inglewood that also use the line, yeah.
And then just a question of pure ignorance with the lining material, and I know PFAS is a big thing with the renewal process, and I know PFAS is in a lot of plastics and a lot of things there. I mean, do we know that this would not be contributing to that problem there?
Yeah, so the contaminant that is mainly concerned with the old lining technique was styrene, and that's because they used to cure it with hot water, and obviously it would, I guess, leach the styrene out of the pipe and send it downstream. But with this UV technique, there's no styrene or any kind of environmental contaminants that actually leak into the system.
Not during the curing process, but over the time the pipe the material is stable there and will not leach any.
Yeah, the material's stable once it's cured.
Yeah, just want to make sure we're not adding. Try it with bamboo. I just. Great. Any other questions? All right. Well, need a motion here. I have it. You want to? It's right there.
I move to approve Resolution 81-2024, approving a construction contract between the City of Littleton and Inliner Solutions LLC for the 2024 sanitary sewer interceptor rehabilitation project.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 81. Any further discussion, Council? Nope. All right. Voting is open.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
All right, last item on general business here is, well, thank you, Brent, for the presentation. ID 24179, consideration of project downtown process modification to explore additional design options. I talked to the city manager last week. Yes, it was last week about this, and originally it was going to be just a update in his council report, but I figured this, council might want to have a little bit more discussion and feedback, and so I think having a general business item like this, just to get some feedback on Project Downtown, and some kind of discussions that we've had since our last meeting, and I know when we had a fair bit of citizen comments, kind of urging us to look at a different option than those 3 finalists that were presented to us. So I'll turn over to the city manager.
Thanks, Mayor. So as you say, this item, as of the start of last week, was more of a council referral. So I don't have PowerPoint slides tonight, and we weren't able to arrange for our project team and staff to be here tonight. But I'm going to do my best to kind of give an overview of the questions that we've heard, and what the option would look like if we did further explore that. And finally, seek your direction on, the next steps here. If we should really follow through with this process that we've been on, or take some time to explore a new option more fully. So at council study session on April 23rd, you looked at and had a conversation about Project Downtown, and you considered 3 different scenarios or kind of options for concept design that had been part of this process for for some time. That was the kind of latest of 4 different council study sessions on the project. It's been in the works for almost a couple of years now. It's been, really the base of a close partnership with the Littleton Downtown Development Authority, the LDDA, and really based on their plan of development. It's also been the subject of an extensive stakeholder engagement process that has really, brought together probably 20 different interest groups across the community, used extensive surveying. I know we've touched over 1,700 residents in talking about the project and preferences and options, and all of that has resulted in the really strong support across the groups, not unanimous certainly, but strong support for this village concept. And that is the concept that council supported unanimously at the April study session. Just as a recap, the village concept would deliver an elevated pedestrian experience. It would include 2 blocks of curbless street between Prince and Curtis Streets to really create that flexible, what the consultants call festival space that can be closed temporarily for events and entertainment at the city's discretion. It would include all of the green infrastructure that you've seen, including new street trees. It would have a shared street at Nevada, which would emphasize pedestrian travel over vehicle travel. It would enhance Little's Creek as a place for people to walk and gather, multimodal improvements at Prince Street, and facilities for safe bicycle parking to facilitate and encourage easier access to downtown Littleton. Importantly, likely the recommended Phase 1 projects, which would likely be that festival space and green infrastructure among kind of the key projects, would not necessarily preclude future city council's vision and action for even more enhanced pedestrian focus for Main Street. So the project team is currently working to finalize what we're calling the preferred alternative, because we heard your direction from April, support for the village concept, and we're trying to take those kind of favored ideas from the other concepts and build those in to the preferred alternative. Without modifying the process, the project team will complete the preferred alternative over the next month or so, and then solicit final feedback from the LDDA in October, and with plans to bring it back for council's consideration in November. Assuming city council support for the final concept and designation of funding for a Phase 1 project, staff would move quickly into design next year and plans to construct that Phase 1 in 2026. So that's kind of where we've been. I've heard questions from several city council members about exploring additional design concepts that would reduce travel, lanes of travel to probably a single lane of travel, and even, that we could consider closing Main Street to a vehicle travel and just really have this pedestrian entertainment area, as our downtown. I think, so I think where, just lost my place. I wanted to take some time tonight and just answer questions in public for you about kind of where, how the project team had thought about those questions early on as we were scoping the project. Since the questions have come up over the last few weeks, I know the project team has had significant discussion, been able to kind of fill us in on some of that work that had happened early. So really it comes down to those options being a very different level of downtown, a very different level of option that didn't square well with the project goals that we had set with council early on. And those project goals chiefly come back to achievability of a project, that, being able to make some impact within a relatively short time to support the LDDA's plan of development, which also includes cost feasibility. We have about $10 million set earmarked in our 3A capital sales tax fund that, preliminarily we had plan to use for Phase 1 of Project Downtown. And so, the project was scoped. We have the budget we have. You'll hear what some of the cost impacts might be. But the project team built this project plan around those goals And they knew that it would take significantly more analysis, different level of consulting, if we wanted to kind of get into that level of consideration of either closure or severely reduced lanes of travel. So real briefly, I'm not going to read through the staff communication, but you know, as I say, that would be a very different level of analysis that we need. We need both more traffic modeling. Main Street currently handles about 9,000 vehicle trips per day on average. So the challenge would be, how do we route that traffic through this part of Littleton? Our traffic engineering team and the consultants have said that in order to really consider making this kind of that level of change to Main Street, we would have to probably study 8 different intersections in the vicinity of downtown to really be able to identify the capital projects needed to increase both capacity and safety at the intersections around downtown. Probably the biggest concern would be Santa Fe and Bowles, as we already have traffic backups now. So how we would kind of route traffic through there. Very much ballpark, but you know, the estimate is that based on what it takes to do some intersection improvements that we've had recently, if we had to upgrade all of the intersections around Main Street, that could cost $10 to $20 million before we're able to invest in Main Street so that we could route the traffic appropriately and manage that kind of change to Main Street. But we think equally important to the traffic analysis would be the importance of some study and understanding of the potential economic impacts to downtown. There's a chance that it could function well as a pedestrian-oriented retail center, but we know, and I think we heard from our LDDA executive director tonight, that it's very difficult. It can be very challenging to make those kinds of spaces work. So there are consultants who do those studies around the country. They could help us understand that. And there's also that understanding of what it would take to activate the space. The idea that we would have to plan very much in conjunction with the LDDA, we would have to plan to have funding to program that space. It doesn't just happen without that funding and without that intentionality. So those were a couple of the technical factors. There is also the International Fire Code that requires 20 feet of clearance. We have had some conversation with our fire department about how that could be managed. They've not expressed a definitive opinion one way or the other, but they would be very concerned knowing the density of downtown Littleton. They have said that they'd want to spend much more time analyzing that, and I think their comment was their most concern was for the intersection of Santa Fe and Bowles, as we do already have backups, it would be very challenging to meet that. So I've talked about budget. Current budget is $420,000, and that's how the project was scoped. I had some more cost detail in the staff communication that I won't go into the same detail now. But when you think of the additional traffic analysis, the economic analysis, the activation evaluation that we need, and then some potential additional staff support to kind of change the schedule, it could double the cost of a project, which council could choose to do. That funding would likely come from 3A, and it would just come from other potential funding from other projects. Timing-wise, though, I think that's a real important consideration. To do the various pieces that we've talked about, if council were to direct us to fully develop those different options, We would want to really start more organically with the LDDA in what that scope is. The LDDA is a critical partner. This, again, is intended to advance the plan of downtown development. So we'd want to take some time with them to make sure that we're on the same page about what this new option would be. We'd also need to get those contracts in order for you, given the value. They would have to come back to council, so we think that could take probably 3 or 4 months. The actual consulting and analysis, that could take probably 4 to 6 months. We don't know yet who would be doing that economic and activation analysis. We have some ideas of who could, but we don't want to, we don't know what that timing would be, but we should allow for 4 to 6 months. And then we'd also want to give this full public engagement as we have throughout the rest of the project, and that has been taking about 4 months per public engagement cycle. So all of that to say that, you know, I think from our standpoint, the existing project downtown process is nearly complete. It does promise to deliver the design and construction of phase 1 over the next couple of years. The process has been extensive so far, with opportunities for question and input from all parties, and there have been lots of questions and suggestions. The project has forged strong support for the emerging preferred alternative, which is based on the village concept. So really, you know, that plus the cost and the time, and really what we think is the advantage of making an impact within a couple years, as opposed to what we think could be 4 to 5 years, with the additional planning, additional capital projects in the vicinity of Main Street, and then actually doing the work on Main Street could take probably 4 to 5 years from now, which would certainly extend the time for the benefit that we had expected. So with that, that's an overview of what we know, and just seeking your direction on whether you'd like us to more fully develop those options with all the steps that I've outlined, or if you'd like us to kind of stay on the plan that we've been on, and bring back that preferred alternative and get going on these downtown improvements. Thanks, Mayor.
Yeah, so to kind of summarize, I think after our last meeting where we had all those public comments asking about that, there were at least 3 council members. I was one of them, kind of asked like, well, you know, we have an ability to respond back to this community of, you know, why didn't a option to close Main Street off or make it 1 lane rise up there, and then what would it cost to or take to do that? And I think, you know, that was brought up early on in the stakeholding process and kind of, I will say, quickly rejected for a variety of reasons, including the geometry of some of those intersections and costs of adding to those intersections. And then, you know, if we wanted to go back and do that, I think, you know, we double the price of that. So I think Jim's just looking right now, do we want to stick with where we were with those 3 options in the village that was kind of coming out? Or do we want to delay the process and spend $460,000 more to, you know, see if it's even possible? What would it take? How many more millions of dollars would it take to go in a different route? So I'll start off and say, you know, I think what the process we have right now works. You know, I was a big advocate of closing Main Street down, but it's, you know, sometimes, you know, I like those kind of big changes, but the fact that, you know, it's way more expensive, it has a much broader impact than just Main Street. You know, there's intersections throughout town, you know, even further away, that's really going to change things. I think it's, you know, I don't want to let perfect get in the way of good enough, and I think this is, you know, good enough and it's a good plan, and so I'm going to, you know, want to have them go with where we are right now. So, but Councilmember Driscoll.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mayor. I think we have good momentum. We vetted this pretty thoroughly with the community. We've heard their concerns. I think the design addresses a lot of those concerns. I do think this plan will get tweaked over time. But for me, it's about let's keep our eye on the ball here, and let's continue to move forward. That idea of looking to close down Main as the DDA referenced, those pedestrian malls are failing, and I don't think that's the right solution. My only thought would be, as Jim stated, design in 25 and start working 26. I would like to see some small wins for downtown. I'd like to see us pave Main Street. I'd like to see us maybe get some trees that are in planters or some other type of greenery that doesn't necessarily have to go in the concrete, but can be moved with forklifts or whatever to dress up downtown. The flower boxes we have down there right now are not up to snuff. I've told my wife she's going to take those over next year. So there's a lot of things we can do in the meantime and show the city that we're gearing up for bigger things. But for right now, let's get some of these smaller projects done. Some of it might be a little bit of a waste of money. For example, if we pave, we might have to tear some of that up. But that being said, I do think it'd be worth getting started sometime in February or sometime in 2025 without final design and all the other thoughts that we have to put on paper.
Councilmember Wright?
Yes. So I really appreciate all the work that was done on this. That really has been pretty much the last year, all the stakeholder engagement especially. I was not there at that council meeting when that direction was given, but I did hear about it, that there was interest from several of you. I did vet that idea by our merchants down there, and there was curiosity, but not really interest. And so just in case that came up at all, and I think their curiosity would not measure the amount it would cost to extend this out to allow for that option. So I like the plan that we have. I think the village concept is great. Jenny, I appreciate you coming too and kind of filling in some of the gaps to also speak on behalf of what you're hearing around that. So I just don't think the cost warrants it. And I mean, I don't think when we're thinking long-term like that, that we do want to do it right. I think for sure, since this is like a legacy project. So I mean, I don't take that consideration like lightly, but I actually did forget that there was a very specific reason why it was taken off the table. So I really appreciated you bringing that up. And I think it's good just to continue to remind people about that option. So.
Anyone else? Councilmember Peters?
Oh, getting tired. I wouldn't want any residents to think that we didn't want to spend $400,000 on a $30 million project, but I also get the practicality of moving forward, and I was one of those people who also asked, and to not have been here for that part of the conversation, I understand. Stalling things and starting over is not practical at this point. So I think I agree, there's interest from people, we've heard that, but probably not enough to change things at this point. I would be curious about two things, which I feel like I've asked a few times, and it's on me to follow up on these, but I feel like I need more understanding and education around fire code and not just having the fire department come in and say no and what that really means and pushing that envelope a little bit. So I don't know if I need to follow up with a chief or something like that to get more information on that, but I don't.
We can get that for you.
Okay, I don't feel like I understand that, and it just seems like the hammer drops, and it's okay.
And I want to say, this is, the fire code considerations are not driving staff's recommendations here. It is one factor and it's significant, but it's really, I don't want anyone to think that that's the reason that we don't think we should move forward. But we will certainly follow up with you on
Okay.
how that works.
Right, and as it relates to the fire code, that's a code that city council adopts and city council amends. We certainly get buy-in from South Metro Fire in terms of when we adopt those. So when we adopted recently the IFC, we obviously sent that version to SMFR, who went through and they provide their changes, their amendments, their recommendations, and then we bring that forward to city council. So just because something says it's in the fire code doesn't mean it can't change. But
Okay,
to Jim's
that's
point,
helpful.
that wasn't our sole consideration.
That is helpful, but now I lost my other thing. Maybe it'll come back. Go ahead.
Councilmember Reichert?
Well, I guess So I agree with the mayor, and I agree with Councilmember Driscoll. When I moved here 15 years ago, the Main Street was really a pretty sleepy place, and over the past 15 years, it's really grown in its ability to be a kind of a arts and culture district where people want to come and spend their time and spend their money. And I think in general, the changes that have happened over the last 15 years have been really positive. And I'm super excited about the village plan. And for me, I think the most exciting part for me are kind of the activation of the streets to the north and south of Main Street. I think we want to grow the kind of the commerce area. And I'm also excited about having people being able to come to Main Street through different modes, and I think that's work that we're going to do on Prince and work we're going to do on Littleton Boulevard and future stuff. So I'm super excited. I think we want to get an early win. I think we want to keep moving with this, and so I'm kind of support staff's recommendation.
Councilmember Grove?
I agree with everybody. I think we should stay the course. We've done a lot of work with the community and the DDA and staff to find out what they've wanted and narrowed it down to this one plan. I don't think it's worth the cost to delay it. I'm also not a fan of dipping into 3A money. We've dipped into it a lot. I think the voters really expect us to see some capital improvements and not more consulting fees. So I think that's important. I think the economic and traffic implications would just be overwhelming in terms of shaking that all out and all the time it would take. I appreciate what Jenny told us about the success of these closed downtown areas and these closed pedestrian malls were not successful. We don't want to not be successful. And I think our citizens are really looking forward to getting our trees back, whether they're in pots or in the concrete. And I don't think we want to wait too long and have them think that the city and council is not getting the projects done that we promised that we need to do. So I'm all for staying the course.
I want to add, if we save $460,000, that's half of a well for Kettering. So I just want to add that.
Councilmember Peters remembers what she was going to say.
My other question was going to be, are there other things we can do? I think what, some of our bike vibrant Littleton friends were trying to say is to make it less, if 9,000 cars a day are going down this small portion, to make it less attractive for it to be a thoroughfare. Is there policy things we could do or other things to say like your big loud vehicle does not belong on this road, or I don't know.
You're not referring to a fire truck, are you?
Right.
To think about those sorts of things.
Yeah, and I can just comment that the village concept, does call for significantly more pedestrian space that would reduce some parking areas, bump out some of the concrete to allow for more gathering, more seating. So there will be a feeling of more, visual friction, as a planning term I learned once, where it'll feel like more of a, of that pedestrian space. And I think this kind of festival space for 2 blocks, that curbless feel, will definitely, feel like it's not just for cars, and that's really the goal. So that's what you'll be seeing, and I'll make sure that the project team highlights that when we bring that back to you.
And I think we could do, things like speed limit. It could, go down to 20 or 15 miles an hour just on Main Street, which if people aren't going to want to do that, they'll find another way to get around. So, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I just want to take a quick step back to say, I was also one of those where my original desire was to be presented with additional options. And to the credit of the DDA, as well as all the consulting teams that have been through this process and have engaged in a very rigorous stakeholder engagement, ultimately it comes down to us as council to make these decisions. I felt that some of the alternatives, I think, were correctly put aside as part of that stakeholder process. The consultants, the team, the city staff did the correct thing in focusing on the alternatives that were coming out as a result of the feedback that they were receiving. I also felt that it is part of our job to say, pause for just a second longer so that we have this discourse that we're having tonight, so we all walk into it making a very clear-eyed statement about, do we go in a different direction? Do we do something that is in opposition to that stakeholder engagement process and make a very clear and conscious decision about doing so? And I felt like we didn't quite have the opportunity to really say we do pass on these options because of these reasons. So that was really my primary reason for asking this of the city management and the project downtown staff, and I really appreciate what you've brought back to us. And you know, I've obviously done a little bit of soul searching with this as well. I think the cost that you see here is kind of the full Cadillac. There is economic development. We would know that there is extensive traffic management studies that would need to be done in order to accommodate the throughput that would have to go through there. And I also, again, just wanted us to be very clear about what sacrifices we are making to get what kinds of benefits. And yeah, millions of dollars in traffic improvements in other intersections would be a cost I would be willing to bear in this process. That would be something I would desire. Hearing the feedback that we've seen, I've gone over some of the past DDA, I'm sorry, not DDA, but Project Downtown surveys, feedback, responses. It is very clear that amongst all of this variety of stakeholder groups that these options were disregarded for a reason. I'm having a hard time because it's not the option I would have chosen, and I'm trying to take myself out of that and say, I hear the will of the folks that have the most invested, the most to lose, and the most, I guess, long-term connection to that place to move forward with a village concept. So I am not going to suggest that we pursue one of these alternatives, either the no lane or single lane. However, just as an addendum, a thought as part of this process develops, the village concept does allow for a much more flexible and usable space. If the infrastructure allows for it, if the time allows for it, as we move through this village concept planning, to be as creative and open and flexible with the infrastructure that we put in place. Obviously, trees don't have quite that degree of flexibility, but some other infrastructure certainly does. And so I think we can still at least explore what, maximizing the pedestrian potential of downtown without losing some of the key vital aspects of the parking, the throughput that so many of the businesses want and really need in order to have their businesses thrive. So, I know we're moving we seem to have some consensus on a 2-lane village concept option moving forward. I would just maybe ask that Project Downtown, we as council, don't lose sight of the fact that that doesn't necessarily mean we have to restrict ourselves to exactly these things forever. We can build flexible, functional spaces to test things and see into the future. So, thank you again for especially Ms. Starkey in the audience, to the DDA and your businesses and the staff that are providing input throughout this whole process. It certainly is heard, and to the staff for exploring these costs and these concepts. So I feel much better now having heard everyone clearly voice their thought on it.
I'm glad you could think that out loud.
Yeah.
Can I have one other thought here, Kyle?
Sure.
Are you done, Steve? Okay. And I appreciate what Brett Murphy had said a little bit earlier. We have a really cool downtown, and it doesn't have, we don't have to go to the nth degree to just make it the coolest town in the whole world. There's small things that he had mentioned, some better lighting, getting some trees or some canopy going. And the one thing that I've been a real big advocate of is getting our alleyways cleaned up and utilized more. I think, again, these are simple things. I think they're simple things of paving the alleys and getting people to use those a little bit more, whether it's for seating or whether it's for traffic or wherever it's for. But let's really think about our alleys and how we can activate those a little bit better.
City Manager, feel like you have clear direction?
We do.
Great.
Thank you, Council.
All right. Item 10 on the agenda, and there are no ordinances on second reading. So with no further business, we are adjourned at 9:34.